Excellent.
Oh.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the March 26, 2026 meeting of the Milburn Township Charter Study Commission, which is called to order. In accordance with Section 5 of the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Laws, 1975, be advised that the notice of this meeting was made by posting on the bulletin board in Town Hall and forwarding to the officially designated newspapers that this meeting would take place at the Bauer Center at 8 p.m. on Thursday, March 26th. Meeting details in the draft agenda have been posted. Commissioner Villa, will you please stand?
This
pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I will now call a roll call vote to those who are present.
Mr. Miller, present. Dr. Thomas here. Ms. Parker Lentz,
Present.
Mr. Tennant,
Here.
Mr. Drucker.
Here.
I note that we also have Council Suzanne Tabasco of King Mansion Collins in attendance.
All right. The record will show that we have a quorum for this meeting. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Beautiful. May I have a motion to approve the March 19th, 2026 meeting minutes?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Reports. Are there any commissioners with reports since our last meeting? No?
No.
Good, because we have a lot of work to do tonight. Are there any other reports? No. Okay. Public comment. To speak during the public comment period, please follow these instructions. Ensure your Zoom display name shows your first and last name. Click the raised hand button when the public comment is announced. You will be called upon in order and promoted to panelists. Turn on your video when called to speak. Clearly state your full name and whether you are a Milburn resident or a business owner to facilitate an orderly meeting and permit all to be heard. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. A reminder that the public comment period is an opportunity for residents to share their views with the commission. Commissioners will not respond to questions or engage in dialogue during the speaking time, but will carefully consider all comments. Does anyone have something to say?
Jay Morielli, President. I'd like to commend the commission on the last few Thursday meetings. I thought the information presented and topic was fantastic. And a lot of good discussion on, for the most part, on both sides of the topic. I'd like to ask a question, and I know I haven't been to every meeting. I think I've watched them all. And I did just watch Sunday's session this afternoon. But has the commission brought in a strong mayor to discuss the perspectives from that side of the equation? I get the sense the feeling is against that in general, but to be complete, I don't know if one has been brought in. I may have missed it, and if not, if you plan to bring one in. Next comment regards partisanship. It seems that some people believe partisanship is only a national issue. Partisanship occurs at every level of government in different ways. I grew up in the city of Chicago in the 60s and 70s. Richard J. Daley was mayor. If you wanted a city job in the city of Chicago, you needed to belong to the Democratic Party. Had nothing to do with national politics. So when you consider partisanship, or when we talk about it, it's important to realize partisanship occurs at every level and it's different. Just because an issue is national and it's partisan doesn't mean it's a local partisan issue. Just because there's a local partisan issue doesn't mean it's a national issue. So I think it's important to distinguish between national partisanship and local partisanship. And I think Diane Eglow even brought this up in her much read letter, where she talked about party influence at the local level impacting a decision to be made in our town. Finally, I'd like to comment on the vicious verbal partisan attacks on Gene Cosgrove on Sunday. I think the commission missed an opportunity to denounce what were clearly partisan statements meant to disparage an individual not responding to even the topic at hand. And I think poor Mrs. Cosgrove was even responding to a question from Mr. Biller. And to be attacked in that nature and not to denounce that as a commission, I think you missed a great opportunity. And I think it's because of this type of behavior that is tolerated that people choose not to comment publicly in TC meetings or at these meetings because they know that they're going to be attacked. This is not only tolerated, but in some cases, this is celebrated, as the individual received a fist bump after his attacks on a person just speaking their opinion. Watch the video, you'll see the fist bump at the end.
Did you see that we kicked him out of the meeting?
You didn't kick him out,
We
Yeah,
did.
yes, we did.
no,
Yes, we
Did you
did.
hear strike one, strike
First-
two,
first
strike
of all,
three coming
Jay,
from me?
there were multiple
Before
attacks.
before
There
he
were
spoke,
multiple attacks.
before he spoke, Mr. Biller said a statement, okay, in regarding folks have different views, okay, and let's respect each other. And then
And
when
you
he
will not argue
turned,
with each other. That
No,
was
yeah.
the setting of the rules.
and then when the individual turned around and was verbally abusive,
I said that was strike one, then immediately I said strike
then-
two.
then I,
Said strike three, he said you're out of here.
then I banged this and
That was
I,
not a
I
chance.
didn't
And I
hear
said
that,
you're outta
watch
here.
the video, what I heard is,
You didn't
Number
hear me
one.
scream, strike one, strike two, strike three?
what I heard on the
And
video.
then he literally said, "Get out of here.
Yeah.
You're out
Yeah,
of
he
here."
said you're out of here.
No, he said, what I heard on the video, I'm going to ask you to leave.
He
And
said
then-
you're out of here.
And then the individual stood up and said, I'm leaving. Did the fist bump on the way out?
He did.
And then my understanding was, and maybe I'm wrong, is that he was allowed to remain in the room.
well, you know what, I'm gonna end this, I'm gonna end this, the discussion right now. Because we have a lot of work to do, and I'm a person that, I wanna move on. It was an unfortunate incident, the guy was kicked out, and the
And
conversation.
then our attorney actually restated the rules and said that was decorum was needed, but you didn't hear me say strike one, strike two, strike three, I
I think
yelled
the
it.
commission should denounce those comments publicly.
I denounced them.
Alright,
No, none of us supported. We didn't like
Yeah.
it. He was on.
Yeah.
I thought it was
He
inappropriate.
Yeah, it was totally inappropriate.
Yeah.
That behavior had no place here, which is what Corey was saying, that
I
has no place
anticipated it
here.
was gonna happen. I warned not to do it. He still did it. We took action and he left.
It happened twice.
He came back only to listen. He was not allowed to speak again.
And he
did
apologized.
publicly apologize. I wish he had done the right thing to begin with, as Corey and I
But he
were talking before. But I think that's the end of the topic.
does anyone else have anything to say? Jean?
Okay, I'm gonna read what I'm saying. I just want to let you know that I didn't have time to listen to the video of the meeting since it was only posted today. I also wanted to comment about what I heard from Township Committee member Ben of Red Bank. I don't know his last name.
Ben Stoller?
No,
Forrest.
Red Bank,
The
Red
Red Bank
Bank.
committee man was here.
Oh. I'm sorry.
Two Bens.
Person from
Yeah.
Red Bank, gotcha.
Okay, so, I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Hear you.
Okay, he said in their non-partisan election that they had two slates and one person running unaffiliated. And then my take on this was it seems like the equivalent or similar, having these two slates and an unaffiliated person, to having our current two-party system. So the concern that was expressed by the members of the public and I'm not sure, because I didn't hear the video again, was about the unaffiliated individual running in a two-party system and not getting selected, and wanting to have nonpartisan to give that person a chance. So, anyhow, I see that just being a repeat, because what I see the situation that he described is essentially two slates of like-minded people. So even though it's full of like-minded people, it's the equivalent of having a partisan party system like we have now. And the unaffiliated person is not selected for a slate, is at a distinct disadvantage, just as I think most people agree now. So I don't see it as a solution, and I don't think going nonpartisan and having it, even as you guys get a chance to decide whether to put it or not on up for a vote, it's important that you consider that, and I think that you should not have it as on the ballot to vote on. And I also want to say, I differ from what Jay says about Washington policies and local policies not overlapping necessarily. As I said at the last meeting, I was in Washington, D.C., advocating for the GCA on behalf of clean air and clean water. What I found was there actually were differences of opinion between both parties. Partisan differences. And
Jane, I'm gonna stop you now.
no, but
No, later on.
No, but that's only 1 second, but I'm
Okay.
saying that the parties are important, and I think we should keep them.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to say something now? We're gonna have another, public, comment later. I'm sorry?
Anyone online wishing to speak? Can raise your hand.
No. Oh,
Stand or?
yeah, no, you can sit, stand.
Charles Bambara, live in the poet section. I have to say, I've been in town for 29 years. And for 25 of those years, I was quite content to stay in my own little world and not get involved in politics and not get involved in committee work. But I saw what was going on in the town, and I thought I should get involved and have a chance to have a say and perhaps make a difference. I also saw, and my heart went out to the people who lost everything in the flooding in town. In their homes and their businesses. I'm an engineer with over 50 years of experience, and I felt that even though my home does not flood, I'm on safe ground, but I wanted to get involved because I knew I could do something about it. And when the first meeting of the Flood Mitigation Committee, I was confronted with partisanship that what am I doing on the committee? And being confronted to the point that I told the chair, I'm here to help the town. I'm here to share my expertise and try to solve a problem. This is completely apolitical. Politics has nothing to do with this, and I really resent it. And if this is going to go on, take me off the committee. There were several other instances where I said, look, this can't go on, and I'm not doing this for political reasons. I'm doing this to help the town. The last township committee meeting, somebody stood up at the podium and called me out personally and accused me of something I had nothing to do with, that the Army Corps of Engineers was proposing, and saying it was my design. And I think all of that was rooted in politics. So I have to tell you, I'm sick of the politics because we have so many wonderful people in this town. We've got neighbors fighting each other. It's making enemies out of people. If there's a way to get rid of that and make it apolitical at our local level. I'm a big supporter and I'm all for it. I understand it's not gonna be difficult, it's not gonna be easy to implement by any means to try to keep parties out of it. But we need to do something because it's disgusting what's going on right now.
Thank you.
I'm sorry for
Diane?
walking, I'm sorry for walking late. If it goes nonpartisan, which I'm completely in favor of, would you have more than just, as it is now, two for each party running? Would it be an open slate like the Board of Ed? And it'd be just like randomly picked? Is that the goal of nonpartisan?
Randomly picked, do you mean on
Like,
the ballot?
Like through like how the order, like it's not alphabetical, like how they decide like the Board of Ed names. So that's the goal, not to be just stuck with.
It would be governed by, I believe,
The
the
New Jersey
uniform
election
numbers
law
of
Right.
does
elections.
picking.
So you
Yeah.
could have 8 people running.
Right.
And I think when we spoke, I wasn't sure if there was an answer, because some people asked me, would they ever allow ranked choice, which if you're gonna have 8 people
No,
running?
not in New Jersey.
No.
It
We
would
don't
to be
have
at
it.
a government, a state
I
level.
was gonna comment on that, because I actually did some homework about it and everything. I also went to council, and we here in the state of New Jersey, we don't have rank. Right,
And not, you couldn't put it into your own local
We
bylaw?
can't.
no.
Okay, thanks.
I was from above us.
A Morrow resident. I just, to somewhat, buttress what both Jay and Charles
Yeah.
had said. The reason I supported, and voted for the commission to be formed, was the fact that, I believe that it's time for Milburn to go completely nonpartisan, unaffiliated, have people run the election or run for office based on whatever the Faulkner Act calls for nonpartisan government, have an elected mayor. And I think that would serve Milburn the best, in the best condition that it could. Having partisan elections in this town over the 14 years that I've lived here, I've seen, as Charles referenced, more and more vitriol and more national anger come into what is our local elections. We have enough issues to deal with this in this town to have partisanship override a lot of what needs to be dealt with. Infrastructure, school systems, flooding. I mean, there's a number of issues where we need to take partisanship out of it. And that's why I supported forming this committee to evaluate the available forms of government. My opinion.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Someone online.
Oh, someone online.
Alright, Regina's iPhone.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I actually wasn't sure I was going to be able to speak, so I greatly appreciate this opportunity. Regina Truitt, Short Hills. Just first off, I want to say thank you to the volunteers who are serving on this commission. Volunteers are the backbone of Milburn, and I know that's been a lot of work for you. I appreciate that, first off. I wanted to say that I'm in favor of partisan elections. Full disclosure, I'm a district leader for the Democrats, but I've thought a lot about this and also frankly thought about when it would be time for me to leave my own party. And I have to say that my decision is that partisan elections are important. You don't have to align with every single thing in the party, but it does help you determine the political affiliations and policy platforms of your candidates. And that is crucial when you're trying to figure out who are they and what do they stand for. Another key component that is in favor of partisan elections is the very real aspect of funding. When you run a partisan election, you get funding from the party, the local party. And that really is helpful. To take that away in some place like Milburn or in many towns around our country means that only people with financial assets and resources can run for office. The funding behind political parties is significant. As many of you know, I ran for the Board of Ed twice. It was a great experience. I won both times. And I will say that it was quite a bit of money out of my own pocket, though I did get some donations from friends and family. Most of it was self-funded. It was thousands of dollars. Not everyone has those financial resources, and they should be able to run with funding from the party. The committees, I hear you. It looks like there's been some bad feelings on committees. I want to say I know when Annette Romano was mayor, and I believe that Mayor Saccomanni has also chosen bipartisan people to be on committees. That's important and should probably be a value set that's ascribed. I don't think partisan elections should prohibit that from happening. Every mayor should strive and every township council should strive to have bipartisan membership on their committees as a goal, as a standard goal. And lastly, I want to say the vitriol that happens during elections, unfortunately, it's part of human nature. I can tell you, as someone who ran in a nonpartisan race twice, it does get heated when you have talented, smart people running. They're going to do the best way of convincing you that they're the best candidate. And sometimes that means attacking the status quo. It's not always friendly and nice. And it is a way to differentiate between your candidates. Anyway, those are my comments. And lastly, I just want to say I agree with Mr. Morial that the commission should apologize to Gene Cosgrove. That was a striking display of lack of control. I hope he's okay. Quite frankly, I hope the gentleman is okay. That was worrisome to me more than anything. But also, I do think the commission should apologize to Mrs. Cosgrove for the outburst, and I appreciate that you sent him out of the meeting. But I do think the commission should apologize on behalf of what happened to Mrs. Cosgrove at the last meeting. Anyway, thanks again. Have a great night.
Thank you, Regina. Oh, I'm sorry.
Frank Sack-Mandy, resident. So I want to push back on this notion that, you know, you're not going to be able to run or fund an election unless you have partisan elections. You know, when I ran 2 years ago, I think maybe 15% of the funding came from the county party. The rest of it was raised from individuals in town. The money we raised, we had just as many donors that were Democrats and independents as they were Republicans. So I think that shows that if you have the right candidates, you're able to raise money independent of any sort of, you know, political structure. I also would urge you to look at the BOE. Every year, the BOE has elections. They're nonpartisan. A lot of people run, and they're able to do a lot with very little funding in many cases, because when you take the outside money from those parties out of it, it actually helps level the playing field quite a bit, because then everyone has sort of a fair chance to go and raise money. And so I actually think that moving to nonpartisan local elections, if that's what you guys decide to put on a referendum and the town chooses, I think that's going to be a benefit overall, and it's going to take the amount of money required to successfully execute campaigns, and I think it's going to lower that threshold considerably, and I think it's going to level the playing field. I know that our opponents, they got a lot at the time 2 years ago. They got a lot of money from people that were out of state. They got money from their party that was funneled from organizations out of state, people out of state, or other party politicians in the state. And I just think that in local elections, you ought not to have that type of money from outside political sources flowing in. Now, obviously, nothing is prevent that from happening under nonpartisan elections. However, if you look at the BOE, you don't see that happening there. I think if you look at other towns that have gone nonpartisan and you look at their elect, you're going to see that you're not getting political parties that are donating money. It's coming from individuals. So I think nonpartisan helps level the playing field, and it will actually help make it easier for people to run and not need as much.
Thank you.
Sorry,
Let me.
I just wanted to ask the part B of the question. If you go nonpartisan, do you have to have an elected mayor?
No.
Okay,
No.
thank you.
Dave?
Yeah, just speaking individually, Dave Cosgrove. It sounds to me like partisan versus nonpartisan. You're still going to have the partisan parties, the party that funding these endeavors, funding the elections. Nonpartisan doesn't stop that. And maybe most importantly, a nonpartisan does not stop a local party from endorsing a candidate. So, people look at this and are feeling or thinking that this is a panacea that fixes, people attacking people, politically, or personally. It's not. The reality is the Republican Party and the Democratic Party are most likely still gonna endorse somebody who's independent or nonpartisan. It's still gonna be there. It's not, I just think people are kidding themselves, having been through an election, and you have as well. They're kidding themselves if they think that type of animosity, the type of smart aleck comments is gonna disappear. It's not. And maybe it's a national discourse, that we all need to have, or maybe we need to police ourselves better, when we interact with people. But, I keep hearing partisanship is causing this, and I don't think it is, my opinion.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, good. I now close the first public- No, I'm gonna have you folks back later, not to worry. I now close the first public comment period. Are there any comments from the commission regarding any comments made by the public? I think we should hold off on that till after we have the deliberations, unless somebody wants to say something.
I think if anybody has something
Yeah,
to say, it's probably a good time because it's fresh in our minds, right, before we start to deliberate. So if anybody, feels strongly about anything that you said, I think it's good to
Took some notes and I figure out.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I meant, so we can do it while deliberating on a particular point, I think.
Okay, good.
Yes.
New business.
Yeah.
What?
I thank the public for commenting, and I do want to apologize to Mrs. Cosgrove. I think that the behavior was inappropriate, and I'm happy to say that in public, and I apologize on behalf of,
I don't think we caused it, so I'm
Right.
apologizing because we caused.
Well, I
something.
apologize that
for
it
some
happened
action,
in the
but-
meeting.
In fact, I anticipated it and tried to cut it off at the pass beforehand, but.
Right,
I hope you
with
feel
your comments
that
to
you were
say.
heard. I hope you feel that you were heard. That's all.
I guess
idea
my,
was for you to express yourself.
I guess my
I'll give you a
only
chance.
comment here is, my focus is not the individual as much as, that if we have knowledge now that there are in particular people that might have a chance of acting out, to be at the ready for it, and to also be at the ready for people we don't even know that might happen to show up for the first time, and to act more quickly about it, because it was quite threatening to
It was
have someone.
30 seconds, I did strike one, strike two, strike three.
No,
You
I
said,
don't,
"Much
I'm not, I'm
faster, we're not
saying,
bodyguards.
I'm saying, no, I'm just saying, you got the gavel there, whatever it is,
He
to
was
like,
gaveling.
I was gaveling.
I know, but I don't know, get a
We're
better
not gonna
plan,
vote
get a
it,
quicker plan, I don't know what it is, whether you need the police or something, but it was very threatening to have someone trying to talk me down and not allow me to speak. And I think sometimes you take it, I don't know, like when you kind of casually know a person, you think maybe I'm safe, but maybe, I don't want to go further, but I think acting quickly is in the best interest of everyone, not necessarily that individual, but another time may come up again unexpectedly, and you need to have a quick plan of, I don't know what it is, to react and get somebody out of the room.
I don't know what TC
Thank
does.
you.
Whether it's the police being here or not, I don't know if that takes that.
Okay. You good? Should I?
I thank the public for making comments. I think we'll address them all in turn once we go through the rest of the meeting.
New business, discussion of next steps. Before we begin deliberations, I want to briefly reflect on the work that has brought us to this point. This is our 16th meeting as a commission. For context, the Red Bank Charter Study Commission held 16 total meetings over its entire process. The Bradley Beach Commission held 15. We have equaled or exceeded both. In phase 1, we have structured private interviews with 12 current Millburn municipal employees and 16 current and former township committee members. 28 interviews covering every major department and every era of Millburn governance back to 1991. In phase 2, we went beyond our borders. We spoke with elected officials and managers from other New Jersey municipalities who have lived through exactly the governance questions we are deciding. In total, we conducted 43 interviews across 36 individuals. Throughout, we have held 2 rounds of public comment at every meeting, recorded and posted every session, and have been guided by excellent legal counsel. We have done the work. Now we will deliberate. Deliberations. We have before us a set of determinations the commission must make tonight. I want to work through them in order, one at a time. Some of these questions we have studied in depth over many months. Others are consequential choices that follow from our primary decisions and that we will need to address tonight for the first time. Let's take them one by one. Ready? Ready, Pat? Ready, everyone?
No idea what's coming at us.
You just wait. Commission recommendation. Our threshold question. Do we recommend that Millburn adopt an alternative form of government under the Faulkner Act, recommend a special charter, or recommend no change?
I can start off by
Please
saying,
do.
I think a change is needed, and the reason I say that is by practice, Millburn has chosen to have an ordinance and appoint a business administrator, which practically speaking is very similar to a council manager form. So we have a township committee form. I don't need to repeat everything, but just very briefly, where the township committee has executive powers, but by ordinance, we have chosen to put a lot of the executive power in the hands of a business administrator. So one of the forms or options under the Faulkner Act is a council manager form, where that happens by statute. And in my mind, it seems like the past leaders of Millburn had chosen to enact a form which is similar to the council manager form anyways. So it makes sense to make it cleaner and adopt a different form from the township committee form, because it seems like in the past we have felt it was inadequate to address our needs as a municipality.
I tend to agree, and on top of that, I feel like our current form of government limits some of, it really handcuffs our options. For example, size of council and things like that.
Right, you can only be 3 or 5
discuss.
members,
Yeah.
you cannot have 7 under the current form. You cannot have any direct petitions or referendums on the ballot by the voters. So there are a lot of disadvantages of the current form, which is why the Faulkner Act created new forms, I believe. And many townships have chosen to take advantage of the new forms, and we haven't so far. So that's my reason, at least, to recommend it.
I concur.
I think regarding this portion, it seems like if we're already practicing under that, I understand that that's a good, likely, forward-thinking, more modern way of doing what we're doing, but codifying it, right? So that, I mean, I don't think I disagree with this particular number. And I don't think no change is what should happen here. Nor do I think a special charter is appropriate. I don't think we need to go bespoke and create something of our own and create all sorts of issues. I think there's a reason why these were created, to try to move forward, if not antiquated, but just make it better.
So just to repeat, there are 3 options the commission has, as corresponding on before. Keep the current form, recommend a special charter, we have to go to the legislature to be blessed. Or third, choose one of the Faulkner Act forms. What we're saying is, special charter is not an option. What we're saying is, we do want to change from the current form, so we don't want to stick with the current form. So now the question becomes, what form do we want?
Well, I mean, everybody we interviewed from the council manager form of government really strongly recommended. I think there were a lot of good people who were smart and well-spoken and had experience in, I guess, former BA positions and, just a combination of years of experience. So I feel like we've been guided that way from other townships, from other, the equivalent of business administrator, manager role, and that it was rated superior. So I think that I can totally get behind. I feel convinced that by all of the people we've interviewed, who already have these other forms of government and the equivalent of the DA position, that was my, biggest concern, is to make sure that what we have, the good thing going that we have, doesn't change because the form of government changes. Like, we have a good thing going. So keep the best parts of it, make certain things a little bit better, right? So if this form makes that happen.
The criticisms we heard about the term, the constant annual elections, those criticisms of a current form of government, that those are the criticisms we heard in our interviews with people, they cannot be addressed within the current form. That's right, Council? We cannot move to staggered terms and elections every 2 years instead of one in the current form.
That's correct. You have to move to a Faulkner Act board.
Correct. So we did try to think about, hey, are there ways to address our perceived shortcomings within the current form of government? And the answer to that is there's really no way to do that.
Right.
It must
And
change.
right, and it was overwhelmingly evident, when we started doing the municipal interviews first, right? So we started that. The biggest complaint was that, this discourse goes away in the beginning of the term, this and that, every single year there's a thing, you have to kind of wait and you can't get business done. So this forced
And the
pause.
feedback we received on this was not just modern, it extended through.
Through the term of.
Correct.
Through
So it's
various different administrations, whether it was Republican, Democrat, whether it was, 2020s or 1990s, it was, that feedback was consistent. So
Right.
of all of the issues, this one seems to be something that would be.
Yeah, no question.
I think there was one member of the public who ever said to me, I like it every single year because I get to know that I can vote somebody in or out. So there was one person, but overwhelmingly people were like, oh gosh, if it's, if it's gonna calm things down, it didn't really sway me away from, that. At first I was like, well, maybe we don't, I started off with maybe we don't need to change, right? And I need to be convinced, do we need to change? And each conversation I've had with you guys and often I've had with the interviewees, got me to the next place of thinking. And I wasn't convinced that it was the council manager until we started to learn from the people who actually have those forms of government, that that's a really good, more modern version of what we have with some more optionality. So we could still stay 5. It could go up, it could go, the same. And that's, a different portion of it, but it allows us options.
So I'm just gonna put my thoughts on the record. I agree. I think, township committee as a form of government dates quite far back in time, back when our country looked very different and back when the needs of our local municipality were very different. That's probably why it's 5 people that have all legislative and executive authority. As we moved into the modern era in our town specifically, we created the BA ordinance in 1984. We've been very lucky that we've had good continuity with just a BA ordinance, because that ordinance can at any time be changed by a majority of the government. And I think that given that, by tradition, we have sort of found ourselves in a almost de facto council manager form of government, I think the transition towards a council manager is not the biggest change, so to speak, because we've already seen that the township committee is comfortable, deferring their executive authority to an appointed business administrator.
And I think the fact that in the council manager format, you don't have department heads being at the risk of, that's another thing that it actually makes it really truly a statutory thing, right? You can't just change it back, because that was a nightmare that, when Tim Gordon said, if you hire me, and that's our former business administrator, if anybody hasn't heard that from the last, meetings, he said you can't each run a department. It's just not, it's not gonna work.
We've been very lucky that it is written in our town ordinance, not that the governing body members should not interfere with department heads. There are other municipalities, some neighboring ones, that have exactly the same thing written in their ordinances, but are not respected by tradition. So it's much better to have that legal firewall be defined by state statute rather than something that our governing body can at will revise.
And also it is, we have been lucky to only have 2 business administrators. But at some point, we might have to look for a new one. Without that statutory protection, you might not get the same quality person in that role because they feel that, they're gonna wanna go someplace that has statutory protection.
Now, I do want to address Mr. Moriarty's question about the mayor council. I think that in all of our phase 1 interviews, everyone seemed to be pretty comfortable with the way legislative and executive authority is, split currently between the township committee and the business administrator. I think there were a couple members that we had interviewed that specifically said that a directly elected mayor with executive function specifically in that mayor position was a bad idea in our town, mainly because the folks in our town that would stand to serve, for example, I think Summit has a directly elected executive mayor. I believe she had to retire from her medical practice in order to take over as the mayor, so.
Right, I think it would grossly eliminate, who would want to do that? Like, what, if you ever considered running, you'd be like, oh, I really don't have the time to do it, so I can't do both career and that, so let me just not run. So I think it just would eliminate,
And I think the continuity aspect was a little concerning in the mayor council form, because every time you have a new elected mayor, you sort of have a new elected administrator and your whole executive branch turns over. So currently with.
Just to be clear, we're talking about a strong mayor.
Strong
Yeah, this is and we're addressing.
Right.
Mr.
Jay's
Moriarty's question
question.
about the mayor council and whether or not we considered it. I did also, because I have an interest in the affordable housing issue, I did notice in our local TAP reporting in West Orange, they've been having pretty big issues, shall we say, about, they have a mayor council system. And their mayor is not in alignment with their council. So their mayor has decided to choose a planner, which is their right to do for their 4th round affordable housing. And their council does not agree with that decision, but the council holds the purse strings. So the council has chosen not to pay bills for the planner. And it is my understanding that they have missed all of their 4th round housing element deadlines, and there's just, all these builders remedies. So I think just that scenario alone, I think the worst case is where the executive mayor is in opposition to the council that holds the purse strings and the legislative power. That's just not a good situation to be in.
Well, the other point that kind of, in my view, works against the strong mayor form is strong mayor appoints an administrator, and if after 4 years you have a new mayor, you're most likely going to lose that administrator too.
Right.
Because the new mayor is going to probably want to have his or her person as the administrator. So you potentially lose 2 experienced people at the same time in that form of government. That's a handicap. And that's actually pointed out in the 1972 report that Milburn had and considered this form of government.
I mean, there hasn't been I was gonna say there hasn't been a strong argument in favor of, but there really hasn't been an argument in favor of, let alone strong or otherwise.
Right.
I think there are larger cities.
Right, well, I meant for the municipality of our side.
Correct, for our side, it kind of doesn't,
And demographic nature.
Like Summit has a ward system, so it's just, and I think we all really thought very early on that when we were interviewing people, that a ward-based system wasn't going to be fair for our town, and it would just create more factionalized, decision-making and people feeling unrepresented, so that didn't seem smart enough to change that form of government for our town.
well, the ward can be any form, so that's not, or against the strong.
Correct, but for us, what works in Summit is the fact that it is a ward-based system and a strong mayor.
Right.
It seems to work in their town. We weren't going to go to that, so the strong mayor just seemed to be like negated a little bit.
Mhm.
And not that we didn't consider it, we just didn't interview a person who, I mean, certainly many people know the Summit mayor and have spoken to the Summit mayor, but it wasn't a formal interview process because it seemed like it wasn't gonna work for our town. We were advised against a strong mayor by a lot of others.
So Jay, to answer your question, we did not interview a strong mayor per se, but we did consider that form and deliberated over it and felt like it wasn't as.
Yeah. I mean, I think I had the fundamental concern that it would limit the number of people and type of people that could run, and so fundamentally, I just, I don't know that there was anything that, because we had considered talking to the Summit mayor, that she would have said that would have changed that fundamental issue for her.
I think in our town as well, there's a tradition of the governing body. Everyone on the governing body has an equal voice, and I think we spoke with a lot of members of the governing body that in past and current that appreciated the ability to do that. The lack of a hierarchy, I think, is something that is valuable in our town, and it's a tradition that I think going from what we currently have to a mayor council would just be such a big leap that it would be, a little bit of a shock versus council manager, which most closely approximates what we currently are operating with.
That's what I was gonna allude to, so. And, I also believe, that ward system is out, we all agree on that.
Oh, that's
Wow.
discussion item number 4, so we'll get to it.
So.
All right. So do we want to formalize? I think we're all in agreement here.
We are zeroing in on the council manager form, just to make clear to the public.
Yes.
Number 2 type of option form.
Mhm.
I guess before we do that, I just want to emphasize again, and I know we did touch on it briefly. The annual elections, the election fatigue, and also just the multiple overlap. Just as an example, right now, township committee members serve 3-year terms. Since there's elections every year, someone could potentially be serving with 3 different cohorts of people. And that makes it very difficult to determine, whether or not this person contributed to, stuff that you would like to reelect them for or not. And I think the annual election cycle, as was told to us by the municipal employees, was just a nightmare for them. I think even before we had started this process, some employees had reached out saying, if you don't do anything at all, please get rid of annual elections. And I think, the only way to get rid of annual elections is to make a recommendation for change to one of the following.
I also think with annual elections, you don't let scabs heal. These elections, everyone has agreed, whether you're in favor of partisan or not, that elections can get pretty rough. And when you're having them every year, it almost is like the election never stops because, by the time one's over, sure, you have a period of, a renewal, but there are points where these issues that come up in the election just are sort of sparked again, like, when you're choosing a mayor, for example, in the annual reconstruction meeting, at least as currently. And then I think, you start having in sort of late winter, early spring, the parties start discussing about who they're gonna put up for election. So you're still through election. I think having annual election, I think having elections every 2 years at least allows some people the temperature to lower a little bit.
So piggybacking off of that, the quote that sticks out in my mind was when Mayor Tamburro Verona said, if you have annual elections and you have a partisan system, your window of governing is January through March.
Yes, I was.
Because by the time April rolls around, the primary is sort of in session and people are focusing on the next election and you just can't get anything done because people are thinking about what different votes mean for their election that year.
And policy doesn't get, what it should. And, the municipal employees, get overworked and everything, so. Yeah, I'm totally.
The overhead, I think,
Yeah.
the overhead for just
The
training
overhead
new
is
people, especially given our experience in the last 10 years or so, I think there was 2 or 3 people that served more than 1 term.
Right.
So for
A
the
lot of
municipal employees,
fresh blood.
it's
Yeah.
just constantly getting everyone up to speed and they can't do their actual jobs.
Frankly, I'm surprised it hasn't caused some of our paid administrators to leave, because they've had to deal with, the shrapnel of our elections.
Well, just goes to show you, we really have great people in this town who work here.
But we're not gonna, we might not always have great people, and so we need to set up a system that protects our town.
Right.
So I think we did 1 and 2
Right.
inadvertently, so I think
We did.
let's formalize the recommendation. So we do want to change and we want to recommend a council manager form of government.
Yes,
And we're all, okay.
yes.
Should we take a roll call vote or?
That's not necessary, you'll vote once at the end
Okay.
on the report, so I've
Okay.
noted your recommendation to incorporate in, and we can vote on it.
At the end, okay, good. All right. Size of council. Under council manager, the council may have 5, 7, or 9 members. The mayor sits as one of those members. Has equal vote.
I'm happy to kick
Yeah,
this
you
off.
kick it off,
Okay.
the tricky one for me.
Yeah, so my thinking on this one is, I think 7 is the right number for the size of the governing body. Currently we have 5, and a lot of members have noted that it feels a little light, mainly because they have so many different subcommittees that each person has to sit on. I believe Mr. Stoller, when he came to speak with us, he said he's on 6 or 7 different committees. I think that's just a lot of work for an individual, and I think that actually disincentivizes people from running just because they know that they have to undertake so much work. The other issue with 5, and I think we've experienced this as a body, is that you can only meet one-on-one without activating a quorum, and then having to call a public meeting. And I'm always a firm believer that when you have a discussion one-on-one, it's exponentially less effective than when you have a third person there and just, jumping in, seeing where gaps might be had in terms of logic. I think 3-person subcommittees are very, very much stronger than a 2-person subcommittee. And so I think 7 is a good number. I think 9 is too many. I think you're likely to sort of have too many cooks in the kitchen. But with 7, I think you get a good diversity of opinion. You get the sort of benefit of a 3-person subcommittee. And a sort of a mathematical point, with 7 people, you only need, let me get this right. You only need 3 meetings of different subcommittees to reach the whole committee. So the first person talks to the second and third person, that's 1 meeting. The second person can talk to the 4th and the 5th person, that's the 2nd meeting. And the 3rd person can talk to the 6th and the 7th person, that's 3 meetings. With 5 people, you need to actually have 4 meetings, 1 and 2, 2 and 3, 3 and 4, 4 and 5. So in some sense, even though you have more people, you gain some efficiencies from the additional people.
I
If there's
also.
agreement.
If
And
there's
if there's not, then, it's a people problem, it's not a number problem.
I also think with 7, I personally think, and in interviewing folks around town, I think we'll get more qualified people that would not run before, but will run now and everything. So I think 7 is the number that I'm leaning for, that I'm comfortable with.
But if we don't always get 5 qualified people, how are we gonna get 7 qualified people? It's 2 more bodies that you have to add to, giving up time from work and.
So I will say that was one of my concerns, is like, okay, are we gonna be diluting
Yeah.
the talent pool? On the other hand, are we, to Chris's point, might somebody say, hey, I feel like I can't commit the time, but now that it's 7, I don't have to go to as many committee meetings, so maybe I will. So I do feel that there's an interesting tension there. The other thing I think we need to consider, though, is that our population is growing.
Yes.
Well, it has grown,
Mhm.
but it will be growing, unfortunately, over the next.
For better or for worse, it is going to.
Yeah, we won't get into the.
But, right, definitely, that's not about.
Yeah, different debate. And so if our township is growing, it would make sense that our township committee reflects the growing population, and it gives more people to be an active participant.
Can I ask the question that some of us may know the answer to, but the public might not? If we settle on a number now,
Mhm.
can that change in the future?
It can change before we write a report if we want to change it.
But
and in
if
the
it-
future,
If let's say, there's a recommendation and the recommendation is 7, 9, something different than 5, what happens say 4 years down the line, or there's not enough candidates being attracted and you only get 5 people running, like what happens in that
So
scenario?
if the decision is made and the voters ultimately adopt moving to the council manager form of government, there is a provision in the law that permits all of these alternatives that we've been speaking about now. The size of the governing body, the division of the municipality, the frequency of the elections, whether it's a direct or indirect mayor, and partisan or nonpartisan, all of those things, after 4 years can be readdressed, by either initiative or referendum. So that can be done in the future without needing to go back through the whole charter study commission again. This process is only necessary to actually change the form of government, not to change those alternates once we are inside a Faulkner Act form.
Can we expand on that? You're saying the councilmen themselves cannot by majority choose to change that form, it has to be a referendum?
They can submit that question to the voters. They
Okay.
cannot do it just by,
Passing it.
wait, I'm sorry, let me just review the statute here. I want to make sure I spoke correctly. No, the governing body the question needs to be submitted to the voters, but the initial ordinance needs to receive an affirmative vote of 2/3 of the council. I apologize for having my back to all of you. It's difficult to speak to Mr. Tana and look at all of you at the same time.
Right, so if it's a 7-member committee, 5 of them can, okay, let's ask this question on the ballot to the voters and see.
A council,
Council.
not committee, yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, yeah.
So if it's a 5-member committee, you'll need 4 people to say, 5-member council, sorry, you'll need 4 people to say, let's ask the question about size of the governing body, or partisan versus non-partisan, or division of municipality, again to the voters. So they can decide to ask the question and it's in the hands of the voters again. But they can only do it once every 4 years.
That's correct. That's correct. It's 4 years after the charter study recommendation has been submitted, or 4 years after the alternatives have last been voted on.
And it could be just one alternative, it doesn't have to be all, it could be.
Yes, it can be one, or you can choose to put more on.
Or the voters can initiate a initiative and ask the question.
That is also correct. Let me get the numbers out, so I have them right here. The voters can propose an ordinance pursuant to the initiative process. The difference from a general initiative is that in this circumstance, to change one of the alternatives, you need 15% of the voters who voted in the last election in which members of the General Assembly were voted on.
All right, so I think this is an important.
It's a numbers game.
But this is an important point for the public to understand that the basic decision we're trying to make is to move to the Faulkner Act form of government. That's what we just said we're going to recommend. But there are alternatives within the form of government, alternatives related to governing body size, division of municipality, all those things we have listed here. And those then can be changed either by the people or by the councilmen themselves without this elaborate charter commission process again. So we're not stuck to one or the other choices. So I just want people.
It may not be easy, but.
It may not be easy, but it's possible. It's easier than a charter commission.
Right, definitely easier than this.
I just want people to have an open mind when we have a recommendation done, that nobody is stuck with it forever. It moves us to a modern form of government, and then it's in the hands of the people and the elected representatives to make changes in some of the alternates, as we're calling them. I just want that to be clear.
Absolutely.
I like the 7-member, when we have big decisions to make.
brings us right back.
Yeah, bring it right back.
I
No,
need to be convinced.
Right.
I feel
When we
like,
have big decisions to make, when the council has big decisions to make, right? I think there'll be better, robust discussions as opposed to 5 people, like, 3 people will get together and,
well,
force
that's,
that.
okay, I'm
force that-
concerned about the robust
Chris, are you calling this
discussions.
not a robust?
Yeah. We are having a
Okay,
robust.
but that's what concerns me. We've had robust discussions in the past 10 years. We've had either single parties, robust discussions when TC was one party, intermixed. I think it's a people problem. It's not, a number problem per se. And my several concerns about this particular number issue is that it introduces 2 more robust voices. and that you have to convince each other more. And I get the quorum part, and I know it'd be more fun to talk to three people and get, you know, another
Two.
opinion. Sorry,
Two people.
sorry,
Two
go from
additional
2 to 3, but no, I'm talking about so to have a quorum. Rather,
got
like,
it.
so to not be in a quorum to talk as 3 people versus 2 people, that's what I'm talking about, sorry to be clear. So the concern for you was having 2-person conversations wasn't as robust as having a 3rd person there to, you know, argue with a little bit. I work on a 2-person team, we have other members of our team, but we are primarily the 2 of us leads. There's plenty of robust discussion between the 2 of us, and we go knock down, drag out.
That's personnel.
That's personal.
But given those personalities, if I had a 3rd person, I don't know how I could argue with that 3rd person. It's enough to have the 2 of us in the room, having robust discussions about how to price a house, how to do this. And like, I don't know that I want to fight with another person. I feel like these 2 people that the 2 of us can get to those decisions. I feel like to me, I never felt handcuffed having to just talk to you or just talk to you. And Chris and I have had plenty of disagreements about how things get done or, and we end up okay. You and I have had robust discussions for hours and convince each other, well, what about this? And we start off with one point and at the end, we're like, oh gosh, we've totally changed our minds about when we're looking at the interviews. So I don't feel like I've had an inability to be convinced properly. And then if I doubt what we've discussed, I'm like, let me go check in with, each one of these commissioners to say, this is what we talked about. What do you think? And I don't think that was a problem for me as much as it was for you. And I respect that because I think we all negotiate differently. We all think differently. We all approach logic differently. And I still am worried about 2 more voices on top of the 5 that we have. It's a system, it's a number system that wasn't broken. We identified the government might be broken, just not even broken, just might use some additional tweaks to make it better, to improve it. And I want to leave something better than we left it, than we started.
Mhm.
And I wonder, is it really gonna make it better?
I think you're asking the efficiency question. Is 5 more efficient? Is 7 more
Yes.
efficient?
Right.
Too many voices sometimes are too many people in somebody's head. And now our business administrator, which will now be a different name, has to talk to 2 more people.
But the efficiency is from 2 different perspectives, right? One is the perspective of the manager working with the council.
Correct? And I'm worried for the manager.
And one is the council itself trying to be more efficient with the subcommittees. and all that.
Subcommittees, I understand. I get that. I can get on board with that.
I think, I don't know if you heard, we had manager Verona, I guess, talking to us.
Randolph.
Randolph.
Talking to us. And his view was very clear that, hey, a 5.
We have to
It
keep
can't,
the
it can't
door
be fully
chained
closed. We're
just-
not legally allowed to keep it fully
Yeah.
closed. I'm sorry. We'd love to.
There
Thank
you
you.
go.
Smidge is good. Thank you. Perfect. Much better.
So I think his view was as a manager, he felt managing the 5-person council was more efficient for him. But when I questioned and said, hey, but what about the council itself and its subcommittees? How have you worked with, how have you handled subcommittee questions? And then he was spending more time because they were not as many efficient subcommittees convincing everybody of the same question as opposed to a subcommittee convincing the other members. So I think the question you agree on that subcommittees might be more efficient with 7 is an important consideration. And that overrules for me the efficiency from the manager's perspective. There's a push and a pull there, but I think 7 makes it better for the council.
So you're in the
Makes it-
7th camp as
I'm on
well.
I've oscillated, but now I'm on the 7 camp because I do think that the workload on a 5-member council is quite a lot.
Mhm.
And it will help bring more people to run if they know they don't have to spend as much time as the 5 council body would have to.
I actually think also, and this is a theory that we'll never know until maybe we live it, is it possible, we keep talking and we know that we've been living through some tough elections locally, there's a lot of vitriol. Is it possible that having more seats that you can give out, so more cookies to give to the kids, will cause less temper tantrums because there are more opportunities to sit? And so if you have more cookies to give out, maybe we'll have less temper tantrums because you have,
More voices heard.
yeah, well, not even just more voices heard, more opportunity. So, if
Your
In our
vocal
current
kids to
form
give
of
out, more
government-
kids will show up and you.
Hey, more people show up, that's arguably a good thing too.
Yeah, it's true.
But no, the idea is like currently, the grip on seats is so tight. I think that is partly contributes to the animosity and the tension in elections. And so if you loosen some of the grip, you might actually de-escalate the tone and have better elections too.
Okay, so Ben said the last time they ran unopposed and they're 7, but they've always been 7, right? So I don't know that that was a big change for them.
I think
I don't-
piggybacking on both of these points, I think when you have 5, the stakes for each seat is much higher, right? Each individual controls 20% of the body. When you have 7, each individual 14%. So and so it feels less like a struggle for life and death, right? Like when you need 4 people to make a majority decision versus 3, that threshold is that much higher. And that goes back to Shaunik's point, which is when it's that much harder to make a decision, I think that actually decreases the manager's workload, right? Because there's more inertia necessarily because it's harder to reach a consensus. And so the manager is probably doing less. Now, just let me finish. I think what we can do, even beyond giving a council size recommendation, is talk about some best practices in our report. Because when we spoke to, I believe, the manager in Mountain Lakes, they have 7, Mitchell Stern. He said that
They're tiny.
they're tiny.
They're
They have
really
4,000
tiny.
people.
That was my concern. It's like,
Yeah.
how could 7 people?
But they use the 7 sort of as a way to build up a bench of people that can then mentor, future people coming along, right? So, I think a lot of Mr. McDonald's hesitation is that he just thinks, oh, it's 40% more work. But I think there's efficiencies to be gained
Right,
from
for us, but
building up a
recommend
bench,
best
having
practices.
mentorship. So
And then the family dinner, that
Exactly.
came from Randolph, right?
Yeah.
So that was actually, I think, so I think if there is the natural mentorship, right? So you and I were arguing over that the other day, where I was like, I'm very much on the fence about the number thing, and I think the best practices, something that we feel better, like if we can actually have a list of recommendations based on all of the research that we have been able to do. And there are so many qualified people who've been in these roles that we can, learn from, and compile like, okay, well, if this, then that. Of course, it's not codified, it's not, in statutes, but it's something that could become the best practices that is, the FAQ of what to do. So people can actually come in and not feel like they have a year to catch up, where somebody takes them under their wing and it becomes part of the natural progression.
And I do think that going back to the subcommittee thing, because this is very near and dear to my heart. I think having a 3-person subcommittee where you can have 1 senior member mentor 2 junior members, that adds in additional efficiencies as well.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, I think the comments from the township administrators or township managers, it's gonna be natural that they're gonna want less potential bosses in their ear. So, I take their perspective a little bit with a grain of salt, but I also think in reality, even if you have more people potentially in their ear, I've definitely served on boards and committees that were bigger than 5. And realistically speaking, you have some people who will step up in a bigger way and, less people, and some people who unfortunately don't step up, but, protecting that manager, I think there's an innate thing that will protect the managers in that there are you'll rarely have 7 people that are all alphas and want sort of to step up and be an annoyance and there are especially in this form, there are statutory protections for that manager anyway, so as opposed to our current form.
So are you?
So I'm in favor of the 7.
You are.
7. But can I make one last point? I'm sorry, I'm really annoyed. I think another consideration is when you have a vote that requires a supermajority, like a bond ordinance, when you have 5 people, that's 4 versus 1, right? So if you're that one person, it's hard to sort of have a discussion with yourself if you're in opposition to it. With 7 people, it's 5 versus 2. 2 people can still have a robust discussion on the dais, and maybe, just maybe, they might be able to convince a 3rd person. Right, but when you have that 4-1 versus 5-2 dynamic, I think there's something to be said about
Yeah, that's what I was alluding to with the policy.
Yes.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Supermajority, definitely. Okay, that's a more fair point for me, rather than the behind the scenes conversations that you can have with 3 people versus 2. I get that, but.
I
Um,
definitely have a lot of conversations.
I do too, I always win. I'm like, you know,
I always lose, unfortunately.
oh no, I'm a,
Corey?
I think I've said my piece.
No, 7?
Yes.
look, I mean, I wanted to be convinced, I think I can get there. I think the supermajority point is probably much more valid for me. I've been writing my own notes to myself because I'm arguing with myself this evening. I'm the only one. I might be losing. I might be losing on this one because I understand, look, you guys are very smart people. I understand, I'm willing to concede that I may not be right. And I understand that I was definitely listening to Mr. Tamburo in my mind, and I was listening to our BA because I was trying to not create more work. That being said, having never served on the subcommittees, I know what it's like to have 15,000 free things to do, which is why I was late coming from the rummage sale, you know, so it's like my subcommittees, the more people we recruit.
Yes.
And tonight was we had more people, so you were able to leave early to make sure you're prepared because you knew I would be late. So it's like, right, but I think that's the thing, that's a push and pull. So I guess if that's the case, if it's really the subcommittee and the supermajority, 2 S's, I could actually get on board with that because those 2 are valid points. That I was not considering as strongly. I was considering Mr. Tamburo, I was considering, you know, the other folks who were coming from 5 that never changed. So they didn't know what they didn't know. And we don't know what we don't know, but I don't want to create more work for people in our TC that are going to be elected officials, basically working for free, and also for our BA turning into a new council manager firm. So I can get behind that.
Okay, council 7.
Thank you, noted.
All right. Question number 4. Division of municipality. At large or wards. Council seats can be elected at large or divided into wards with some at large seats. With 7 members, the options are 3 wards with 4 at large or 7 at large. I'll open it for discussion, though I will note that very few of the individuals we spoke with in phase 1 have expressed a preference for a ward system. So I'm gonna make this short and sweet. Nobody here wants a ward, correct?
I'm gonna say it like you would. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Thank you. All right.
I think we should,
For
for the
the
record,
sake-
just have.
For the sake of public opinion and those who might be in favor of a ward-based system out in the public, I do think we need to give it a moment to explain why, because I understand this is something that we each individually probably feel strongly about. A lot of people recommended against it for our type of town. There was a lot of concerns from former and current TC members that there could be factions. So how do you ward the system? Like, do you go Glenwood, South Mountain, Deerfield, and Hartshorne? Like, how do you do that? Now one section's bigger, so now you have to divide it among these lines, and it'll be neighbors against neighbors.
Yeah, that's my biggest thing, is like, we already have enough vitriol, like, we don't need to add another point of
Like-
vitriol.
Right.
Millburn versus Short Hills, we're all the same township, but you know, by virtue of having 2 schools in one district and they're smaller, like, it's just, how do you have representation be fair?
Right.
And once we went through that with every single person we interviewed who served or is serving, it's like, ooh, that doesn't seem like it's going to be
Nobody,
pretty, so I feel
nobody wanted a ward.
Mhm.
Nobody.
Well, you could have some at ward members and some at large, and some representing wards and a couple of at large members, right? We didn't want that because a council person should be representing the whole town, no matter what, in the best interest of the
Right.
town.
Right.
right, so you're
Right.
not speaking just on one neighborhood, you're speaking
Correct.
for everybody, yeah,
Correct.
yeah, I think
I think
that's,
we're too small of a municipality to divide us into wards.
yeah.
You're talking about like Newark or something like that,
It's
where you have a big area and then, you know, there's a greater possibility that you don't have representation, sure, but of the issues that we heard from the public, and a feeling of non-representation was not one.
One of you guys argued with me, I can't remember now who, probably you, because I think you and I have argued the most, is that with 7 people, because that was somebody's point, that 7 people actually gives you more representation potentially as well. So, you know, you're at large, but you also have 7 different people with the voices of, you know, representing the town, so that would
Potentially.
so that would negate the need for a, you know,
Specific
representation from each neighborhood or ward, so to speak, so. I think if that's fair enough,
Right.
To get the public to, you know, if somebody is pro ward, they can at least hear why we're not pro ward.
So are we all in agreement, no ward? Council, no ward?
At large.
At large,
Right,
yeah.
all right. Question 5, frequency of elections. This is a big one for me. Concurrent or staggered? Concurrent means the full governing body runs at once every 4 years. Staggered means elections every 2 years, with initial terms assigned by lot at the reorganization meeting.
I am in favor of,
That wasn't clear, Chris.
Not?
Let me read it again.
Would you?
Yeah.
With maybe explanation.
Maybe I was too staggered because. Frequency of elections, concurrent or staggered. Concurrent means the full governing body runs at once every 4 years. Staggered means elections every 2 years, with initial terms assigned by lot at the reorganization
I
meeting.
think that's the part. we
Just for the
lost.
first election,
That's-
because you need to figure out who will take a 2-year term initially,
Right,
so that's by lots.
Is that something that we should have legal counsel explain, because I think we may.
Yeah, actually, Commissioner Tana just said exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
At the first reorganization meeting of the new government, if we wind up in a position where we have a new government. Basically, at that meeting, it needs to be figured out who is going to take the shorter term and only have 2 years, and who is going to get the full 4-year term that after that point, everyone will be entitled to. So it's literally just picking out of a hat. Some people will pull the short straw for 2 years, some people will pull the long straw for 4 years, and that's how just that first initial governing body will be determined.
And then subsequently, what happens?
And then
Everybody gets 4
subsequently.
years.
Oh,
Right.
okay.
It's 4 years.
yeah.
And would it be the same time as presidential elections?
Well, that is whether, that's another question.
Okay.
Yeah, it's-
You mean
That
May
was-
versus
days.
November? Is that what you're asking? Are you asking May versus November?
Well, I know Livingston always has it at the same time as the presidential election. That way people are more apt to come out and vote.
well,
Oh,
it
so she's
depends,
speaking about-
that's
she's
just
asking
happenstance.
Specifically about
That would be,
presidential, not.
that would be if you
general.
had
Well, you
4-year
have two
terms
of
that
them.
happen to line up with the
Theirs
presidential.
does, I
election.
believe.
I don't think ours would.
Yeah. Yeah, let's just have this
Yeah.
discussion amongst ourselves.
So-
All right, so,
I am in favor of a 4-year term because it allows you to get more work done in a bigger period. I'm also in favor of staggered elections so that you have some continuity and don't have the risk of like an entire turnover all at one time.
Yeah, I think it would be a nightmare for all seven people would now all go away after 4 years. That would, like, you restart everything. That's
Mhm.
not a good.
Well,
And
they
then
could all
even from an
rerun.
election perspective, like you then have the population having to evaluate a full slate of 7 people. Yeah, it's hard enough getting people
Just
to
in
pay
case you
attention to local elections.
Right, just in case you don't have the same people rerunning, which in our history, recent
Right.
history, we haven't had people stay on.
Well, just to put on the record, under the council manager form, it is 4 years.
Mhm.
There's not a
Yes.
shorter term, it's not an option.
Right,
So,
right,
It is a 4-year term, the only option is do we stagger it or do we make it concurrent?
Right, well, concurrent, I think, would just to eliminate everybody. If no one chooses to run, what happens? You have
Right.
7 people going away, you have 7 new people coming in. It's like the learning curve for all 7 will be, there's no mentorship.
one would think we need staggered. Dr.
I think another argument against concurrent is 4 years between the public getting any input into their governing body members is quite a bit too long for my
Yeah.
taste. You know, if you elected someone this year, 3 years from now, they're still up there. I mean, anything short of a recall, which is basically impossible, removing them, I think you need some amount of accountability, and I think having those midterm elections to be able to, change the composition on the governing body, I think that's important.
Right, that's a really good point. And that was the one person who voiced their concern to me, privately, that they like the idea of electing somebody every year because they feel their voice is heard. If you take away that voice, talk about every 4 years, like, people will become so disenchanted and also disinterested. Like, we lose the public. What I loved about the Verona interview is that the fact that that town is so engaged and they are, it seems very healthy, and they're listening to each other. And I hope that you know, this process will engage more people and then every 2 years you get people like liven up again to be like, okay, we're running, this is kind of cool. Every 4, it's like, who's running? What did they do? Like, unless something, you know, really controversial happens.
So every 2 years you elect either 3 people or 4 people.
Correct.
And in the first election, after the initial election, will it be 3 people or 4? How do you? So will 3
Well, when you
people
say-
pick up?
So
Do 3 people pick a 2-year term after the initial election or 4 people pick?
after the,
And at the initial election,
at the initial election, after the governing body is accepted, so then you have 3 people with a 7-member, you've got 3 people going into a 4-year term and 4 people going into a 2-year term.
Yeah.
And back to the point we were discussing before, that initial 2-year term is just for purposes of that first term. After that, everyone goes back to 4.
got it. So 4 people will pick the short straw, so to speak.
Correct.
So I guess I'm of the same opinion, we should have staggered elections.
Yeah.
Dr. Khan?
Yeah, I think, you know, what we have currently with township committee with elections every year, I think that's too much. I think elections every 4 years is too infrequent. I think 2 years is a happy medium. I think that sufficiently increases the governing window, so to speak. You get at least a year, maybe a year, 6 months, 9 months, depending on partisan, nonpartisan, which is a big improvement from our current 3-month governing window.
True.
Could you imagine the potential 7 lawn signs?
Hey, our lawn sign was wide enough.
Right.
You just need to pay.
Commissioner Parker Lenz?
I am all for staggered. I
Staggered.
don't need to argue with anybody about that.
Council? Staggered.
Thank you.
Okay. Question number 6. Selection of mayor. The mayor may be directly elected at large as a designated council seat or appointed by majority vote of the council at reorganization.
This is the one I have the most trouble with.
Me
quite
too.
frankly.
Me too.
Well, I started with a
I
totally
think we
different
all
opinion.
did. Yeah.
We all
Completely
have a
different
problem with this.
So on the one hand, I went in wanting the direct election of mayor.
Me
You know, I thought the town resident should have a direct say in their mayor. However, I'm conflicted a little bit because with a weak mayor, which I think we sort of are going for, is it confusing to tell the people that they're electing a mayor, but the mayor really doesn't have much power more than a council person? So I feel like it sends a confusing message to the residents to say you're electing a mayor, but they're really not really any different than.
It would be different if you elected a strong mayor.
Right, yeah.
Right,
that's what I'm
that would
saying.
actually be like, okay, now you're actually really running the town, you're well, kind of working full-time-ish and you're in charge of.
It also, there's also a concern that in theory, if more than one person, if you're gonna have more than one person run for mayor, then that's gonna cut them off from potentially good candidates from serving on the town council.
Mhm.
Because if they lose the mayor election, it's not like they can fall back and be on the council. And so now you need even more people to run because you want a contested council election, you want a contested mayor election. Well, you know, and then we're expanding to 7 council people. I don't know, you know, I don't know what that does to the election. So as of now, I've sort of flopped over to the non-direct election of mayor, which to me is kind of crazy that I'm saying that.
I have to say, I feel crazy about that too, because I was so excited that like people would have a chance to elect the mayor, especially like almost everybody that had a slightly more contentious, you know, experience on TC getting the votes among the 5 people to become mayor. Somebody's always like feeling hurt, and then in the new year, it takes a couple months for those feelings to tamp down before they can kind of govern together again. And it just changes that dynamic. So going back to that to be like, well, we're gonna tell you to do that again. But I'm hoping that with the number increasing to 7, there will hopefully be less hurt feelings, more people who can kind of, I don't know, and I don't know if that's possible based on the number, but.
And then, correct me if I'm wrong, in a weak mayor system under the council manager, the power of the weak mayor is they appoint the zoning and the planning?
They have the ceremonial power, let me get
To marry.
to marry, yeah. They do the agenda, they lead the meetings. But other than that, they are just a member of the council with an equal vote to everyone else.
What about appointments? Are they
Yeah.
appointing people to zoning or the planning board?
I thought they,
Land use.
yeah, I thought.
Land use, I think that's.
And also the
yes.
library.
Yeah.
So the other concern is that if you get somebody rogue, they're there for 4 years.
4 years, yeah. There's a lot more damage that could be done over a 4-year period.
You mean people are gonna select or elect somebody wrong?
Well, I don't necessarily mean,
No, I'm just joking.
yeah, I don't necessarily think it's rogue, but I think when you have a directly elected mayor by the people, it sort of sets up this hierarchy where that person might think that they're better than everyone else. And if they hold a 4-year term, and let's just say they're not a good mayor, right? So they're elected for a 4-year term, they're not a good mayor. Residents of the town recognize this, they vote a majority of council people, to oppose that mayor's policy. Now that mayor is just gonna stonewall or obstruct and say, well, I still have appointment power, I'm gonna appoint whoever I want to appoint. Now you're in this sort of nightmare scenario, which is, and
It's kind of
literally,
what you were pointing
yeah.
out with one of our neighboring towns, that like they're fighting with each other about appointments and they missed the deadline.
it was,
So
for
it's
me, it
like-
was literally a nightmare scenario because I woke up in the middle of the night and I was like, oh gosh, like a directly elected mayor would cause this problem. Where, 2 years into this, let's just say terrible mayor term, everyone doesn't like them, you vote in a majority of the council to oppose them. Now that mayor is just like, well, I still have appointment power, let me just obstruct, make the majority of the council look bad. Now, 4 years later, that mayor's up for re-election, no one knows who's
Right.
causing the dysfunction. Is it
What's-
the majority that you voted in, or is it the mayor from 4 years ago?
Right, that's the, we don't know what we don't know, and I think that's always very, that cautionary tale of we really don't know, so in order to protect that from ever happening, you have your peers to report to and to, hopefully.
Well, my thing was, let's say a group gets together and they want to, have a direct mayor, okay? So let's say, and I'm just making this up, don't quote. Let's say,
Well, you're on the
You
record.
don't call me.
don't quote me, this is just a,
This is him
this
thinking
this
it
is
out.
a hypothetical,
I'm thinking aloud.
this is a hypothetical,
Don't crucify you.
yeah, right.
Okay.
Let's say, Mildred Short Hills, youth baseball, they have over 700, kids, right? And parents and what, so the president of the, baseball league gets everyone together and they go like, you know what? Vote for me for mayor and I'll have the Board of Ed, I'll have the town buy the Okie track and we'll make, turf fields and we'll make baseball fields. And that doesn't happen. So what happens to, all the folks that voted for me?
But what
Or
happens
her?
to, what
Yeah.
happens to him or her? They
Right,
get totally,
Right, so like, and then they,
Your
People
point
get really
is,
mad at them.
under council manager, they don't have the power to make it happen.
right. Anyway.
And I think that was a cautionary tale from one of our interviews where they said, the problem is you have this directly elected mayor. And they were worried for that person actually, because now the public thinks, you could do all this stuff for me, when you don't, it's like, well, but I'm still your neighbor, I really can't, I'm a weak mayor. What does that mean? People don't really understand what a strong and weak mayor are until they do. And then it's like, okay, what have you done for me lately? Well, I'm just the same as the at-large members, so.
Yeah, so me, the weighing is, all right, do we solve for the bickering that happens at every reorganization meeting to
Or
where the council?
Well, it doesn't happen.
Not all the time.
Some, not all.
Well, it's not as public all the time. But it happens. So do you solve for that issue? But then since we're moving to a different form of government with different terms, you're just solving for that issue, creating another issue. So it's the weighing of which issue is easier to live with. And so that's where I'm trying to grapple is the issue of, avoiding that horse trading and bickering by having the council a non-directly elected, is that benefit of avoiding that outweigh the, I suppose, detriment of having an elected mayor that could be in place for 4 years and has the power to appoint people to 3 of the most important boards that we have in our township.
Well, I would almost argue that the so-called horse trading is almost a feature rather than a bug of the indirectly elected mayor.
Mhm.
I think that some of that horse trading is, you know, when you have a minority coalition, if you want to get someone's support for mayor, you say, you know, I'm willing to support you for mayor, but I would like these appointments on, say, the planning or the zoning, right? And that actually allows a minority viewpoint on the council to be represented in those appointments, rather than to just be steamrolled for 4 years and not actually have any representation. So
Yeah, right.
I think if done correctly,
Horse trading. could be-
it shouldn't bleed out into the public sphere. I totally agree with that. But I think and I did, you know, walk through all the scenarios in my head. I think having 7 people does help to mitigate some of the dysfunction that we've seen recently, just because it creates more pathways to the mayorship. I know on the Board of Education, they select the board president from amongst themselves. They have 9 people. I don't think it's been as contentious of late, but
It's like a corporate board, right? So corporate board's gonna elect their chair.
and I think that that's a good point because council manager is actually based off of the organization structure of corporations, right? You have a board of directors, they appoint a CEO, the CEO has all the executive power. Normally for these boards of directors, they elect their own chair. And so it's not that the shareholders are directly electing the chair of the board.
Chinook?
Well, I just wanna bring you in on this one a little bit. Can you summarize for us how a mayor's position, if it is different under council manager form versus the current township committee form? What are is there a difference in the power that the mayor has?
I didn't prep on the council forum. I mean, on the township committee forum, sure, so let me try and do this off of my head. So still a percentage vote, right? That's based on the number on the council committee, not on the.
Not about how they're selected, but what powers they have
Right,
once
so
they're in
they,
office.
so they're voting as part of the legislative body of the council.
Who first among the rules.
Right, exactly. Under council manager, they have the appointment power that we've already selected. Do you have a specific question to help jog my memory?
What I'm trying to get to is, there's really nothing that would change under a recommendation as it relates to the mayor's role of power. Is that statement correct or not?
That is correct, yes,
Yeah.
that is correct.
So the mayor in the council manager form is still the first amongst equals
Yes.
at best. It's the weak mayor, as we have been talking about. But at the same time, the argument for a directly elected mayor is the public face of the town.
Correct.
And should the people of the township have a say in who they want the public face to be? But then does it create a misalignment? Because, hey, I'm directly voting for someone, they should have the power to do something, but they don't have any power different from the other council members other than some appointments, right?
That's the tension that was identified earlier,
Correct,
yes.
so. Again, I'm just laying out the for and against arguments in my own mind, which initially when I started this exercise and read up all the options, my view was we need to have a directly elected mayor. It should be the public who chooses the public face of the town and not just the 5 or 7 members of council. But then I looked at, hey, what does the mayor actually do? And realized not too many things different from the other council members. So why should, I mean,
How
in a
does that
way.
person get a 4-year term to be the mayor the entire time?
Well, then other council members will get 4-year terms. I mean, 4-year terms are
I need
gonna.
a term as the mayor.
As the mayor, right.
And if they lose, my bigger problem was now that person who could be incredibly qualified to serve.
So the council is not even serving on the council.
Right, now
Right.
they lose as the mayor and they don't get a chance. So that was like one of my big like, ooh, wait a minute, that, I don't like that either
Right,
because
so
it
I
takes
started,
out one more
what I'm just
person.
trying to lay out is I started feeling that there should be a direct election. And I should say that feeling was created a little bit after watching a recent township committee meeting. But then I realized that's not the right approach. When you look at the role of the mayor, it is more appropriate that the mayor is elected by the council members than otherwise. So that's where I'm leading Commissioner to answer your question.
Well, this shocked me the most for myself, flip-flopping, and
Yeah.
it sounds like you guys were all in the same place when you
Yeah.
first started, complete flip-flop. I was,
Just to piggyback off of the point where it's, you would lose a good council candidate in the mayor race. The sort of flip side of that is if you have a directly elected mayor and a council person is on the off cycle when the mayor gets elected, and that council person wants the promotion to mayor, now they're running for a different seat 2 years into their term, right? Just to get that promotion. If they do get the promotion, now there's a
but if they don't,
vacancy.
they're out.
Well, they serve out the remainder of their council
Right.
term, but if they do get in, there's a vacancy that then needs to get appointed. So it creates some of these structural edge cases that I
Mhm.
don't
Well,
think
that's
are
an important
helpful.
point too.
Yeah, that's more complicated for. the
For,
future
yeah,
to
for
create
for a
future.
position that is really like
A weak mayor.
not much different from a council person position.
I understand, so it's, if there is a vacancy caused by somebody getting elected to mayor, who's got the appointment power to?
The majority of the, well, that depends on partisan versus
Well,
non.
right, that's where I was going with this. It's
Yeah.
like if. But in either way,
Maybe
so
we
I know how,
say that.
how it works in partisan, so how would it work in a non-partisan?
Yeah, so just for the benefit of the public, in a partisan form, and council can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that if there's a vacancy and that vacancy belongs to either the Democratic or Republican Party, then the local municipal party committee suggests 3 replacements. That gets presented to the governing body can vote on it. If they sit on it for too long, then the municipal party committee chooses the replacement from among the group. So that's the replacement process in a partisan. In a non-partisan election system, people, a majority of the people would submit to, fill the vacancy. Members of the public would submit to fill the vacancy, and majority of the governing body would vote to appoint.
That's more like the BOE.
Yeah.
Right, got it.
Exactly. Okay.
And just another last point that I had, in a directly elected mayor system, I think that it does create additional, vitriol and, putting one person against another, and I think that's something we've been trying to avoid in our discussions.
Mhm.
But we didn't think it would. That's the thing, like in the beginning, I was like, well, it's not going to because you're elected by the public, but there's still hurt feelings if you lose.
Mhm.
And now you're the person in charge for that many years.
All right, Lori, how do you feel?
I'm going, non-elected mayor.
I'm not elected mayor too, yeah.
Not elected.
I will say the mayor is elected by the
By the
council.
council.
Sorry, not elected by the public, by the
yeah,
public,
yeah.
sorry, by the public.
The majority of the vote of the council in a reorg. Okay, that's the proper term.
Yes,
Right?
thank you.
Decent enough, are you?
Yeah, no, I want more.
Okay.
No, more.
Well, the mayor is
We will have,
Council
Oh, yeah.
seats.
we'll
Yeah, but no,
have all these
But yes,
discussions at
that's
the
a
end.
good point,
For the-
we should definitely mention that.
So for the benefit of the members of the public, the councils, the only type of seat that is up for the governing body is a council person seat. Those seats are 4-year terms.
Oh, right, so if you did it.
And
Yeah.
so, but because we chose staggered elections, we have elections every other year. The mayor will be selected after every election, so a reorg where the mayor is selected by a majority of the members of the council will occur every 2 years.
So their term as mayor technically could be as short as 2 years, but they would still continue as a council person.
Exactly.
Or they could be reelected as mayor, and so it could be 4 years that they.
But that's also where we were talking about try to eliminate the vitriol of not getting, that person on board to side with you and be, like advocating for you as mayor. Now you don't have to do it every year. Once again, it alleviates that concern. So for 2 years, you get to govern in peace, so to speak, or as peacefully as you can. And that was like really got me, made me
And-
happier.
Just to put a bow on this issue, I think because the mayor is the chair of the governing body, the council, it's important that the mayor always basically has the support of the majority of the council so that we know the council is speaking in one voice.
Mhm.
When the mayor is directly elected by the people, you could end up in a scenario where the mayor doesn't have the support of the majority of the
Right.
council, and now there's just additional dysfunction.
Lone wolf.
And I think this is an important point because we've heard from our interviews that the managers actually use the mayor position to get the message out to the majority of the council. And since we're going to a 7-member council, I think having the mayor and the council always be in alignment, I think will be just helpful going forward.
I'm not quite getting your point because once the mayor is selected during the term in office, they may lose support of the majority of the council, but that doesn't mean they can do anything.
Yes,
Mayor-
that's certainly
The
possible.
mayor still serves a 2-year term, right?
Yes,
Unless there's
that-
some
yeah,
more
that- yeah,
possible-
that's certainly possible. I think that my point was more, at some point, that mayor did get, buy-in from the majority of the council, so hopefully they were selected to be able to chair a meeting rather than for some other, criteria that is not pertinent to it.
But in theory, by having a not directly elected mayor, you could have a mayor that's elected for or elected by the council for 4 years, but you also have the protection of if somebody is not assigning properly or not doing their job properly, then through pressure on the other council people, you can change that mayor in only 2 years instead of 4 years.
Right. And Corey, when we interviewed the mayor of Verona, he has served 2 terms as mayor. They keep on electing him mayor,
The Verona thing is interesting.
Yeah,
The way they describe it and how they have such engagement in their community.
yeah. Well, that's what,
Governing utopia.
Yeah, that's what-
And part of it is like, it seems
That's what-
too, like, it seems a little bit too,
That's right.
something seems
No.
A little
odd.
foreign.
And I have clients who live
No.
there, they love it.
Corey,
We
Dr. Kuhn,
went and
Dr. Khan and I,
researched their-
we spent multiple hours there.
They are what they sound like,
Yeah,
a governing
Yeah.
utopia.
we spent a lot
The
of time. with them.
librarians were lovely.
Yeah.
Municipal employees were lovely.
Yeah,
Again, best practices, I think
Yes.
when we looked at the towns that we admire,
right.
I think there's a lot of things we can learn from each of them and create this best practice manual, so even though it's not really something we're tasked with, I think we were all pretty excited about the opportunity to give some best practices, even from former TC members of like, well, this is what we didn't see working, this is what you could encourage people to, create that civility. Because I agree, that's not gonna, that's going to the next one, make that point later.
So council, you have the May gets, for the reorg.
Correct, thank you.
Okay,
Elected by
thanks.
council.
Elected. All right, this is this one is a big one.
Special one.
All right, partisan versus nonpartisan. Should elections for the new governing body be partisan or nonpartisan?
Who kicks this one off? I can kick it off. Because I really thought that we should. I guess a while ago, when you ran, Corey, I thought we should be nonpartisan. I so much, I didn't like the process, how it went. I was like, oh, I've got to be nonpartisan. Then I really thought about it as an older person, as a more experienced individual who spent more time thinking about it. I was like, but everything is partisan. There's so many partisan decisions that you make even without thinking about it, and local, national, whatever. I was like, well, I would like to know who is who. And I really bought into comments made to me that, if you go nonpartisan, wolf in sheep's clothing, you really don't know who it is. But on a local level, I think I told the story last Sunday that when my cousin was, total staunch Democrat for him, like locally and nationally, and he did the fireman rescue during a massive flooding incident. And he rescued the mayor who was not his own party, and he got in trouble with his party. And they were like, we're not going to support you. And it was a whole big shenanigans ensued. He's like, I don't think I can do that on a local level. I have to just move parties because it's the people, not the party. And I started to really think about it more when he encountered that. And it became evident to me that and I am very much, I'm transparent about it. I don't care who knows. I'm very much a bleeding heart liberal. I'm a Democrat. I've always been a Democrat. I feel like on that local level, I started to think, gosh, the partisan maybe isn't the right thing. That's what I really wanted, because I want to know. I kind of do. I'm not going to judge people on it. I'm going to be friends with people not from my party. I'm going to be friends with independents. I've learned in my life that I'm wrong sometimes. It's really been a hard lesson to learn, but I've learned it by listening to opposing viewpoints. And they teach me and inform me a lot. And I work with a business partner who's very adamant about her point. And I'm very adamant about my point. We both can't be right. So I'm willing to concede that I'm wrong sometimes, infrequently. And this issue has been sort of this revolving issue really since your campaign. It was the first time I kind of got involved with like supporting them. I didn't like how it went locally, so I tended to flip-flop. And I really thought I'd be more pro-partisan, and I have not stayed that way. I'm much more in favor of a nonpartisan DOE, especially after speaking to so many people who are so pro-partisan. I was like, but on a local level, it's creating this weird dynamic. I don't know.
I feel, in doing some research, 43% of the folks in Milburn Township declare themselves non-affiliated, independent, whatnot. And so we're leaving those folks out, you know, and so.
Well, that was Ben's point. I liked how Ben brought that.
I was in the camp of partisan, but
You were very much in the camp of partisan.
yeah,
Like you were like, I am not into this.
yeah,
I don't like it.
right. But
You know,
as I talk to folks, I'm sort of leaning towards nonpartisan, but Dr. Khan?
Yeah, and just for sake of full disclosure, I've been a Democrat, I've been an independent, I'm a Republican now, but that's because of my involvement locally. I honestly think, and when I changed to be a Republican, I had to think about it, right? Because people will ascribe certain things to certain labels,
they
and
sure will. I did.
Yeah.
I didn't like you when I met you.
I know.
I mean, I met you for hours and I grilled you and I told you I didn't like you.
The ladies are in the bus.
I know. And look, I lived in Boston in New York when I was a registered Democrat, and I was fine with it. But when I moved here and I saw stuff that was going on locally, I decided that it was in the best interest in the town to change parties. And I think that it took a long time to come to that conclusion, but I think that it was a necessary step in order to, make improvements in what we saw was dysfunction.
So let me ask you this question. When you decided to change parties, was it more for just Milburn Township
Yes,
and not national at all? Right?
yes, it was for Milburn Township, because in order to,
But it's a lot to swallow for people because they would, I certainly didn't want to, I didn't believe you.
Right.
And I didn't believe Frank, and I didn't believe Ben.
Another argument folks have said to me is that with partisan, they want to know what that person is thinking, and
But I think you still will.
with this day and age, you could Google somebody and you can find out in a nanosecond.
Can I actually talk about that point? Because
Please.
I know it's been brought up as a positive, I think it's a negative.
Okay.
I
What,
think,
Googling people?
no, the idea of having partisanship support being an important piece of information, I think it causes people to be lazy. Like, I believe that if you are going to rely on just a D or an R, and I have plenty of friends who do this, they just vote the line and they don't take the time. So if you strip that away, there's still people who won't be informed, but at least there are going to be some who will be forced to actually look something up about a person and actually learn about their beliefs and what it is. So I actually, look, I was leaning towards nonpartisan to begin with. I'm not going to sugarcoat, I'm not going to pretend. But I always like to be challenged. So I was looking for a reason to change my mind. And the reasons that were given to us were, it helps with funding because not everybody has financial resources. I think from that perspective, it's actually unequal because it then will give certain person a big pool of money, which will then force somebody who was not nominated to try to have to figure out how to level the playing field. And I do think that there is some validity to the point that, look, not everybody has a lot of funds that they can use for elections. And so there is going to be inequity because you might have somebody running who is just better off than somebody else. But, we can't fix everything in society, quite frankly. It is what it is. We're not going to fix that problem. But I think it's more equal if everyone at least has a shot as opposed to coming out of the gate where you're already fighting against somebody who has a big coffers. You know, the argument that it gives, you know, it informs voters, again, I've already addressed that. I think it misinforms voters a lot of the times, and it prevents people. You know, we've had definitely people in elections who have run without a platform whatsoever. They have not taken an opinion. I sat at a candidate forum once. Somebody was running and I was talking to the person. I'm like, hey, you know, tell me about why you're running. You know, what are the things you want to do in town? And the person literally said to me, well, I don't think that's a fair question. I haven't been elected yet. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. Like, and so, but they were running on a party line, and so nobody knew that. They just sort of got elected based on a party line. So I just fundamentally think that sort of is not, you know, great for our township. I think we have had issues lately, and partly, not solely, but partly because people got elected based on party affiliation alone and not based on experience and merit, and that's what we need to start electing people for. Look, I acknowledge that even in a nonpartisan election, parties can still endorse people. We can't do anything about
Well,
that.
Red Bank decided not to, right?
They did,
I mean,
and look,
committee.
I'm not under any false pretense that in Milburn that's gonna happen. I
No, I
think that
don't
if we
think
go
that.
to nonpartisan election, I think the parties will probably still endorse people, but you know what, that won't be on the ballot. It won't be when people walk into the voting, it won't say endorsed by whatever party. So yeah, it will give
But I
them,
think that's okay, because that will give people the information.
no, that's what I'm saying.
I
It's
think
like,
the
so I'm
committees could
saying
still,
like,
if that's gonna be the case, and that's gonna be the position of each committee, they can endorse, and that way people will still know. I think if there won't be that case of like, well, I don't really know, and if you don't know enough about somebody, you'll just learn more about them, right?
yeah, no, that's what I'm saying, is that like, look, we can't get around the fact that parties will likely endorse people.
Oh, no question.
But at least that endorsement
Yeah, but
doesn't follow
nobody
them
here has a
actually
problem with
into
that.
the, right, yeah, I don't
Like
have a
if Red, I
problem
think
with that.
decided not to, right?
But it won't specifically exclude them.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, Chris, to your point, I do think, oh, you know, another thing is that even if somebody does, forget about the independents and those people.
Okay.
There are also people who don't wanna run as a Democrat or Republican, because then you're on the internet, you have Facebook, you have everything else, and from a career wise, what if you wanna,
Yeah.
you know, you wanna, you know, get a new job? Our politics are so toxic now that you have to then worry, hey, I don't wanna run for office, we gotta put a D or an R next to my name, and hey, what if I wanna run for a job? I mean, frankly, I've had that happen to me because I ran in a Democratic primary. And looking, you know, for a job a few years ago at an interview, people told me, they looked me up on the internet and saw, and my interview turned into a political discussion. Like, so it's real,
Well, there
it
were
happens.
two people that I know were being, I think they were being vetted, and they were both like, I really can't come out and say what my party is, my business will not allow it.
Mhm.
So we said, I just can't, and they were actually two very good candidates, so I didn't really think about it back then, but in retrospect, now I started to review like conversations I've had in the past, since 19, God. Whatever.
So bottom line is, I don't think that going to nonpartisan, I'm not under some false illusion that going nonpartisan will solve all problems. I don't necessarily think it'll solve the toxicity of elections. I think that's a problem from a larger perspective, but I do think it will increase the likelihood of qualified candidates and increase the number of candidates that are running. And for those reasons, I am in favor of nonpartisan elections.
No.
Well, this was a tough one. I had no position at all when I started this exercise. I'm very keen to examine the question. I had to say I've always been unaffiliated. I'm not a registered Democrat or Republican, never have been. And I voted always based on the candidate, whether it's national, local, or state elections. I voted for people on both sides and regretted my vote multiple times. Such is the nature of the polity right now. I do want to comment on something that was said by multiple people in the public comment section of this meeting, that if somebody's standing on a party platform, it tells you something about that person. And that is what I want to challenge, right? Every individual has individual views and opinions. There are many things about core Republican positions that I like, There are many things about core Republican positions that I hate, and vice versa on the Democratic side. And if I look at myself, I feel that, and I'm not alone in that position, I feel like many of us are issues-based people, like they're gonna support a particular issue in a particular way, irrespective of which party is saying what. So how do you, if I'm up as a Democratic candidate, how do you kind of know what I stand for unless you ask me the question? It
Because some
doesn't
people
say
do.
anything.
Because there are certain loud voices who do stand for everything and each party and both sides.
Right, but I think it's like, it's saying that, this may sound politically incorrect, but saying that if you're a Democrat or a Republican, you automatically believe in or you stand for one or two or three things is like saying, hey, if you're Indian, you must be good at technology. I suck at it. Right?
No, you're good at that. You're not.
Well, I mean, it's that same kind of, and to use your word, Corey, it's lazy, right?
Right.
To not form a view of the candidate. So I'm not really addressing whether I'm partisan, if you're a partisan or non-partisan, but I'm against the mentality that you can judge a person simply by the party that they are seeking to kind of use as a
Do you feel it
platform to
almost
stand
gives you
for
an
election.
assumption?
So
Do you feel it gives you a misconception, an assumption about a person that that isn't the case? You automatically assume that that's going to be.
if somebody is automatically assuming that somebody is standing for an R or a D stands for some issue in a particular way, I think that assumption is wrong. You should always ask the question. And it may be true that the person is standing for some core position, but that's fine. Ask that person the question before assuming what that person is standing for, right? And we don't tend to do that. I may be guilty of that too. I may assume, hey, if somebody is a Republican or Democrat, that's what that person stands for. Maybe I'm lazy sometimes and not looking at what that person has said. So bottom line, I think that mentality, whether we are in partisan elections and non-partisan elections, is not correct. And I'm just responding to some public comment for now. And then coming to whether we should have partisan and non-partisan elections, I am in favor of non-partisan. I also want to point out, as was said before, that these are optional things that can change. So I want people to give it a shot with having in mind that 4 years down the line, if we are all not happy with the way things turn out, we can always go back to partisan elections. It's not a end all be all choice that we make at this point. I think one with a non-partisan elections, you'll have more people come out to run because of the reasons you guys just discussed. I think people will explore the candidate deeply because again, if you don't have a platform you're standing for, the electorate doesn't know what you stand for. So hopefully they're gonna ask you the questions and take the time to understand what your platform really is. Look, whether somebody who stands for elections is a registered Democrat or Republican is an easy thing to find out, right? So it's not as if somebody's gonna pretend to be who they are not by not talking about their party. You can know whether the person is Democrat or Republican. So it doesn't, I think going non-partisan doesn't take parties out of the equation. I think parties are important. You don't wanna, parties need to exist.
I agree on a national and state level, that point about being
No, but
informed
parties
is a little.
bring a culture of political participation, right? You have at least a starting point to get political engagement with a group that you perceive to be like-minded. You can have differences with them, but at least there's some core things may appeal to you. And you may say, okay, this is how I start my political engagement. So I think parties are really important. Going non-partisan doesn't mean I hate parties. I just feel, back to your point, for local township matters, it doesn't matter whether somebody is a Republican or a Democrat, right? And
Well,
I
some
think,
people think so. Some people think
well,
that
and they have the
one
right
or
to
the
think so.
other.
They have the right to think so. There's nothing against it. I'm just trying to say, this has been said multiple times. There's no Republican or Democratic way to fill a pothole, right? So I think we as a township need to give this a shot. I think it will empower a lot of the people who currently feel that, hey, I don't really have a place to run because I don't want to label myself. I think that's a very important point. The parties will still be involved and that's fine. They can endorse someone, they can provide some canvassing support, they cannot fund anybody, and I don't think that's a disadvantage or an advantage. People need to raise money and sell themselves on their viewpoint anyways. People do that in the BOE election all the time, and it hasn't stopped people from engaging, or it hasn't made only people of certain be participating in the BOE election. So I think the arguments I've heard against nonpartisan elections don't hold water for me. The arguments I've heard for partisan election actually to me are the wrong arguments, in the sense that we need to move to nonpartisan elections. So that's what I think.
And
It was a very long explanation,
Can I
sorry
ask
for
you a
that.
question, because specifically for you, because I also was concerned about, I guess the idea that, the primary is, and I know you and I have had the primary discussion, but maybe it's not the primary that allows the vetting, but like the actual committees vet, so the concern that people have stated to me, and it was my concern too, is who vets the people? I guess people just decide to run and you just go, like the BOE, but are you concerned at all about the vetting of these people?
I am, but at the same time, what is happening today is if you're nominated by Democratic Party, you almost have a better chance of winning than whether if you're nominated by a Republican or you're independent, right? So I have no reason to doubt the vetting process or the people behind the vetting process, but that's not an election.
Well, maybe
That's right.
that didn't happen in the recent elections.
But
Some
I
vetting
do
has
wanna
been
say-
suspect.
Yeah.
But I do wanna say things change, right? I'm gonna read a line out of the 1972 report. The 1972 report says, under our present system, the voters of Milburn Township have little choice in the election of members of the township committee. At present, nomination by the Republican Party is tantamount to election. This was 1972, right? I can repeat the same words and change the name of the party today, and the same argument holds for non-partisan elections. So again, I'm not sure if I'm answering the question directly, but
I guess if we can just open it up for a minute, just to, whoever wants to opine on the idea of the vetting process, like if you feel like it eliminates the vetting process by going nonpartisan.
Yeah, I think the vetting process for the political committees locally, they're quite opaque, right? I think, Corey, you lived through essentially that you had to run in a contested primary. In my mind at least, I think, one of the parties.
In fairness, the vetting process was not an issue for mine. I had gone through the process. I had been offered the ability to run the year before, chose for personal reasons not to. I happened to run in the year I did. I guess that's supposed to the vetting process. I didn't have an issue that I wasn't chosen as part of the vetting process, because the year before I had been chosen and chose not to. My issue was with that year, who the vetting process resulted in, I felt strongly was very unqualified to run for office and serve this township, and that's why I created a primary. So, I guess I had an issue with the vetting, but it wasn't a personal issue that they didn't select me.
but you still had a primary. So it's not that.
Yeah, forced primary.
The point is,
Not really.
okay.
We had a primary. But the other candidate was supported by the party that got the party money, that got the party line, so it wasn't a open primary.
I guess different from the vetting question, I guess, is the sourcing question, right? So when you have these party committees, their goal is to go and find members of the community that they think would be good candidates for township committee at the current moment. Now, the party's criteria for whom they select might not necessarily be aligned with what is best for the township. It might be aligned with what is best for the party, right? And I think that creates an incentive problem where, now the party is trying to think, who am I going to select that will, bring the party the most benefits? And I think, unfortunately, Ms. Eglo left. There was that letter that I am happy to read about how, the party support came with strings attached. When she got into office, she was given a list of, people that she was told the township should hire, right?
And other people we interviewed said the same thing, that when they were brought down to there was a, oh gosh, what was the county,
The Rahway Mayor's.
Rahway Mayors,
Coalition, yeah.
it was the Rahway Mayors, and
They
and
were
they were told
told.
specifically, and then they got in trouble for questioning, for asking questions.
So I
that
would
was a
say
concern.
that, you know, having a party committee, yes, I understand the party committees are elected by party members in our town. But there was also that incident recently in Morris County where the entire Dover Democratic Municipal County Committee was ejected by their Morris County Democrats for, you know, what they perceived as disloyalty, right? So I personally have a huge problem with people who are not in a municipality ejecting elected members of a municipality that are then going to decide who the candidates are for a local election. And I think that for a local election where the issues really are nonpartisan in nature, I think having this extra partisan machinery in place just gets in the way of a lot of government.
There are still some partisan decisions, I mean,
Right? Sorry, just to add a point. The parties can still encourage someone to run.
Oh, no question.
yeah,
So it's not,
Yeah.
I mean, how does moving to nonpartisan alleviate the concern as who is encouraged to run?
I guess it opens the door for the unaffiliated.
Correct,
To,
I agree
to,
with
to
that.
almost be a little bit more equal in terms of, to some degree.
It even opens the door, like I said, to affiliated who don't want to necessarily go public with their affiliation.
Right.
Meaning, you know, I am a registered Democrat, you know,
Well,
maybe.
people will find out.
Yes, but it's not as blatant that you have to put a D next to your name or an R next to your name so that, you know, like the career issue that I was talking about.
Right,
You
so-
might have people say like, all right, yeah, I'm a
Right, you didn't
registered
have to run
Democrat.
as-
I don't
right,
have to
right,
run
right.
if I don't want to as a Democrat, and I can still, you know, potentially hold off.
I think an important point for nonpartisan elections is that Democrats can run against Democrats in the nonpartisan election, right? I think that's sort of where you almost want that friction to happen so that the Democrats can differentiate themselves on the local issues. Rather than, you know, running as a Democrat, which, you know, because right now you have the Democrats and they're set up in opposition to the Republicans. And I personally think that that's a huge part of the vitriol that we're seeing because you have one side constantly badgering the other side, you know, on things that don't really have pertinence in our local governance. But when you have, say, multiple Democrats, they're not going to start arguing national issues. They're going to start to differentiate themselves on how they feel differently about local
That vitriol is also based on potentially false assumptions.
Exactly.
Because, you know, a lot of it is like, hey, they voted for this person, they're Democrats or they're Republicans, so they voted for this person, so they must be an idiot. But you don't really know how they voted. Just because you're registered as a Democrat or a Republican, they could have different stances than whoever, and they could have voted for the Democrat, or they could have voted for the Republican. So it's, you know, the argument that it's informative, actually it's not, it's misinformative.
I think, and this is an important point, I think setting two sides in opposition to each other is just not a healthy dynamic. I did prepare some statements that, if you don't mind, Chair, I'd like to just read aloud because I wanted to capture the whole.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So I'm a Mac person. I use my Mac. I have strong opinions about it. I will argue with you about it all day if you allow me the opportunity. Now here's the question. Should that be on the ballot? Think about what a Mac or PC divide actually is. It's a preference, a group identity built around a completely arbitrary distinction. Mac people think PC people are wrong. PC people think Mac people are hopelessly pretentious.
Yes.
Neither side can fully explain why it matters so much. It just does. The label is enough. Once you have the label, you have a team. Once you have a team, you have an opponent. There's a famous psychology experiment called the Robbers Cave. Researchers took a group of ordinary 12-year-old boys to summer camp and randomly divided them into two groups. There were no real differences between them. They just gave a name to each group, I believe it was the Eagles and the Rattlers. Within days, they had developed fierce hostility toward each other. They were raiding cabins, refusing to share meals, and fighting. All of it was triggered by nothing more than an arbitrary label. But here's the part that should genuinely alarm you. When researchers studied how individuals arbitrarily sorted into groups made decisions, they found something worse than competition. Folks would choose outcomes that were actively bad for everyone, including themselves, as long as their group came out further ahead of the other group. Not better, just more ahead. They accepted lower overall welfare in order to maximize the gap. They would rather win than do well. That's not an abstraction. I personally think that's what happened here. Rather than negotiating the best possible outcome for Melbourne residents on affordable housing, the partisan dynamic produced finger pointing, blame shifting, and a worse result for everyone, because beating the other party mattered more than solving the problem. And this is what partisan elections do to local government. The R and the D don't describe any real difference in how you fill a pothole, negotiate a DPW contract, or approve a site plan. They're not supposed to. They were built for debates about foreign policy and federal spending, issues over which we have exactly zero jurisdiction. But once the label is on the ballot, the robber's cave dynamic kicks in. Voters stop evaluating the candidate and start picking a team. Candidates stop talking about what they'll actually do here and start performing for a national audience. And when something goes wrong, everyone points across the aisle, nobody is held accountable, and the town pays the price. We're asking voters to choose between a Mac person and a PC person to decide who manages this town. This is exactly how relevant Republican and Democrat are to local governments. And look, if party affiliation matters to you personally when you evaluate a candidate, you're welcome to find that out and factor it in, just as you're welcome to ask a candidate whether they use a Mac or a PC. Nobody is stopping you. But putting it on the ballot draws the fault lines before the conversation has even begun. It tells every voter to sort themselves before they've heard a word about what anyone actually stands for. It does a disservice to candidates who want to be judged on their ideas, and it does a disservice to residents who want to make an informed choice.
Thank you.
Okay, I think, look, I agree. I think that everyone has a right to judge somebody who's on a ballot, and you can judge them based on whatever criteria you choose to do it, as long as you've done the homework to find out that they actually stand for what you're judging them on, not based on some assumption.
Okay. Let's vote.
Oh, no, I think there's a lot more we should go.
Oh, you want more?
Absolutely.
All right.
That's too big of an issue. I have to.
Corey?
Well, I
You want me to continue?
Yeah.
I think it's important to think about what happens, I think we addressed that briefly, but what happens in a vacancy is created in the council, the partisan versus the non-partisan elections. In a partisan election, just to reiterate what we said before, whichever party seat gets vacated, that party is coming in to nominate 3 people, and then the council will vote for one of those 3 people.
Yeah, that's one of the issues that I was having with it. I didn't realize, that was the case.
So
Right.
what happens to draw the contrast, what happens in a non-partisan election if the seat is vacated?
So in a nonpartisan election, my understanding is members of the public would put in to be appointed and a majority of the governing body would select. It's similar to how they do it on the
So
board.
somebody would volunteer to get appointed and then they would do public hearings, present their case or whatever, and then.
Yeah, I don't know if you're familiar with the Board of Ed, they've had over the years a
I
bunch of
know,
things.
I'm aware of it, I do not follow the process of how they do it.
Yeah, essentially, they apply to the Board of Ed and they have like a meeting where there's like an open public meeting where they do a speech, and then at that meeting, Board of Ed votes the current sitting members. And they sit out for the
Yeah,
remainder
I
of
just
the
want to
term.
put
and
that
then-
on record as to how it happens in a non-partisan setting, so.
I did want to mention a point that did come up in our interviews. I believe one, and I think Chris, you and I were in this interview. One person argued for partisan elections on the basis that county and state funding would be redirected towards Milburn if we had a partisan system. I did a little bit of research, and this was the 2025 to 2026 Community Development Block Grant. I will pass this around. I have a couple extra copies for the audience. This was, thank you. So this was just released last month from our county. These were community development block grants in Essex County.
We share one of those.
I think this is pretty interesting. I went through and I looked at all of the municipalities that received the funding. All of the municipalities on this sheet, at least, that got 6-figure grant funding were nonpartisan municipalities or municipalities that hold nonpartisan elections. Milburn is on here as a partisan election municipality, but we got 5-figure grant funding. So I think for anyone who was interested in the idea of partisan versus nonpartisan, I think one of the arguments presented against nonpartisan elections was that we might not get as much grant funding, but empirically, at least in this calendar year, it does not bear out.
And look,
And let me say this, Dr. Connor and myself, we interviewed two guys that were on the DC together. And one was a big R and the other guy was a big D. And what basically came down to is they both said, what is best for Milburn Township? And they came together.
and I think we, from our interviews with other townships that were nonpartisan, they indicated that they've had no issues getting funding from the county.
From Essex County, correct.
I did want to also, and I know Joanna, this was an important point that we saw on Sunday when Ben Forrest graced us with his presence. He drove up all the way from Red Bank for a second meeting in a row. I think he had mentioned that he's on the Democratic Municipal Committee in Red Bank, and he also served on the Charter Study Commission. They actually had the opportunity because I guess his block on the Democratic Committee in Red Bank had taken over the majority. So it's actually better for him and their bloc personally to stay with partisan elections. But they, I think, I'll call it, they did the noble thing and they relinquished their, hold on local political power by going to nonpartisan. And I think he said, because he felt it was, in his words, morally abhorrent for 40% of the electorate to be ignored.
And he said they still serve a purpose because they still support the up-ticket ballots and things like that. So there's still a purpose for the local Democratic in their team and presumably the Republican Party as well.
But, well, he was definitely the voice that was, resonating more with me because, he is also a Democrat and I wanted to. So again, I do, look at that D and I'm like, oh, should I listen to you a little bit more? And I felt like that was a voice. So I was biased. I was like, okay, what was his thought process? What was his logic? And, having the interview and having spoken to him off the record as well and just getting his opinion, he's been staunch in his, logic on the record, off the record, it's all been the same. And unequivocally, like in this one direction, I was like, I kind of feel like I have to hear him out and give him a bit of more weight in terms of how he processed it, because I wasn't sure how to process it as a registered Democrat. I'm like, would I be betraying my own party in my mind by saying we should go nonpartisan? And I didn't want to do that. So that's why I think we were both very much like, this part should not change. Like, this is what, like, I like knowing as well. But then I'm like, if it causes all the other stuff, and I liked the art, I really didn't think about that 43% unaffiliated as much. And I thought, well, that's justifiable. Those people, they can still run. But I really feel like Ben's voice was like in my head.
I think he's saying that like he's able to be nonpartisan locally, but still participate as
Very
a
much
Democrat
Democrat,
that
right.
he feels passionate
And
about.
publicly,
Yeah, on the up ballot tickets.
I think what I found inspiring from Ben's experience is that in the nonpartisan system, sure, in a partisan, had Red Bank gone partisan, the Democrats would have won. You wouldn't have to campaign and get buy-in from independents or Republicans. I think I found inspiring that he actually takes advantage of the fact that their local elections are nonpartisan. He'll knock on every single person's door, right? I think he gave the anecdote of, someone down the street has a Trump flag in front of their house and he knocked on their door and got his vote.
right, he was able, yes,
So
I actually like that too, the fact that he felt comfortable going to the entire town
He
and not just.
presumes, he said that he got it.
Yes,
He said he believes him. He said he voted for me, and I believe him, but.
And honestly, I think when you live in a community with lots of people who hold potentially infinite, combinations of ideas on the national level, to be able to have that conversation with your neighbor is a very empowering and unifying message, right? And I think that's something that I feel personally has been missing in our town because of the way elections have been run, how they've been developed recently. But I think that
Well, not that recently, it's been that way for 10 years, or since Complete Streets. I mean, Complete Streets started it,
I don't
and that had
want,
nothing to do with party.
I don't want to set the expectation that the vitriol may lessen or change just because of partisan versus non-partisan, right? I still think non-partisan.
Well, he did say it calmed down.
Well, I don't think it may calm down here.
They had election fatigue.
I just think there are many other reasons, right? Just it encourages a wider pool of people to just run for office. That's one, and we need the talent for sure. National issues and national party line positions have nothing to do with how we govern our town. We don't want people to judge someone just because of the label they choose to run under. I think those are all good reasons to give this a shot for at least 4 years, and then see if we want to make a change. Interestingly, Corey and I had one interview where was a long-serving mayor of a town, not too far from us, who initially got elected as a Republican, but then was a Democrat, and is in a Democratic Party dominated town, and said that the partisan system works well for them. But when we were asking, hey, would it be, does the party politics would nonpartisan election create a difference in atmosphere in the town? And the answer was, yes, I can concede that. The general guideline would be great. It would be great if people put party labels aside, but it's probably advantageous not to start with a label, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
It
anyway,
was definitely an interesting conversation because they have partisan elections. He was in favor of partisan elections. But then as we started to talk to him, he started second guessing, going, oh, you know what? Maybe we shouldn't have these. And okay, yeah, that's an advantage.
You and I,
We
well,
consider it.
we
So
had the same conversation with somebody else, yeah.
it was definitely an interesting interview where it started at one point, and instead of us learning something, they kind of learned something also along.
We encountered that with some of our interviews as
Yeah.
well, where we were like, well, what do you think? Is it people who are staunchly pro-partisan, and we're like, well, we asked more questions, like, actually, maybe it wouldn't be so bad. So that also allowed me to, in hearing people who were aligned with more of what my thought process is and really the party that I am, I was like, oh, I started to see the ticking in their heads. And I was like, well, that's thinking in my mind and perception as well. So I allowed myself to open my mind to be like, okay, well, if they're thinking of changing their minds, I shouldn't necessarily be. And I flip-flopped a lot in the beginning. I was one thing, then I wasn't, then I was this. And I started to change. And I think Ben really sealed the deal for me.
Mhm.
any more
I
points?
didn't think I was
That's
gonna
it,
change my
man.
mind.
Just one last point to bring up for completeness. One of the folks we interviewed, I think Chris, it was you and me. They were arguing in favor of partisan elections because they felt that the township committee position was useful as a stepping stone for higher political office. They felt it was the sort of entry level position that once you serve on township committee, you prove yourself, then you can be promoted to assembly person, congressperson, etc. I actually felt in my mind that this was making the opposite point. I don't think that candidates should be selected for using our local governance as a stepping stone to higher office. Because I think the moment they get those ideas in their mind, people will start thinking about what looks good to the party versus what's good for the town.
Yep.
And I
I
think
think people still use it as stepping stones, whether it's for the party or for like to become a judge or to become a something else. Like they still use it as a stepping stone if they
No
choose
question.
to.
No
Like
question.
you can't really eliminate that just because you go nonpartisan.
And frankly, you can participate in party politics in order to get your name on the radar of the party without necessarily using our township council as that.
And I think if you're registered, you can still say later, like, hey, I actually have aspirations to go higher. And this is what I did. This is my history with the town. This is how I helped, right? Left in a better
In fact, I would
place.
argue that this is an inefficient way to start a council. There's a lot quicker ways to get to state office than starting at our town council.
I feel like people should be using local office as a stepping stone. I think experience of governance at every level should matter. But if they're not gonna do the right thing for their elected office and think about larger party pictures,
Mhm.
how are they gonna do in the future? I mean,
Right.
right, so
Yeah.
I think that's more of a reflection of the person and their values and their qualities. But I think people should be coming through the local governance levels and going on to run the county or the state or federal offices. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
I don't think I think the point was that the.
Appeasing parties versus
exactly.
doing what's for the town, but that's more of a character question.
You can still use it as a stepping stone in a nonpartisan system. The reason I bring it up, use the stone analogy, I didn't want to leave any stone unturned in our discussion of all of what we've been considering. So I think that is all of the points that I wanted to make on the topic, unless.
Okay, so I'm gonna start with you, Dr. Khan. Oh,
Just
yeah, one more.
so also from Verona, the comment was made to us that the amount of money he had to raise was actually less, right? So that was interesting to me too. I was like, and I started to see that point too, that like if you don't have to keep competing against each other with, and I guess.
Well, that's my point, is it arguably sets the bar low. Yes, you still have to raise money, but unless the party comes in and supports somebody, so there's weakness to that argument, but in theory, the bar is lower because everyone. And so what I started out with is that, like, if you're not out of the gate knowing you're competing against two different parties that already have a war chest, then in theory, you have more people who could feel comfortable running. Because I'm not under, again, I'm not gonna pretend that there are some people who are more financially comfortable and have more expendable funds and they can do it, but that's an inequity we can't control.
This particular point for me was a big sore, because I'm like, we individually and as a group will not appease everyone here. I hate not appeasing everyone. Like I really would like everyone to feel like kumbaya about this stuff. But this is the one thing that, like, there's going to be people who really hate how this gets decided, because I think change is really hard to begin with. So the fact that there's a change potentially, government, and it's potentially because voters get to choose, right? But this is the part that's going to divide people, where I feel like, as the volunteers that we are, we shouldn't be divisive. And it bothers me that this is going to be the point that is going to divide other people and say, well, I can't believe you voted that way.
Well, that's why I'm trying to say to people, think about it as a choice that is potentially temporary.
Changeable. Well, so
it's changeable.
That was the other thing, was helping convince me, because I had a hard time. Like, I think Drucker and I approached it very much with like I'll change these things. I would change certain things, and as we spoke to more people, I became more open to it. And as I get older, I feel like I should be open to change. Like, if you're not open to change, you'll always be a closed-minded person who can't survive and thrive in the future. And you can't connect with the younger generation. So I can never say that I'm always right about everything, and I thought I was right about this and changed my mind, and I might change it back if it's not working right. And
the reality is, we're not gonna satisfy everyone, but and this is what Chris started the meeting off with, to identify the amount of diligence we put into the process. So any decision that is made here is an informed decision. It's not a finger in the wind, it's not an emotional decision, it's an informed decision. And that's one of the reasons I agreed to run with all of you, is because you indicated that you had an open mind to consider every point, and so I don't regret any of the decisions we're making, some of which we agree with each other and some of which we still don't. So, but at the end of the day, it's an informed decision and one that's aimed at bettering the township, and I have no qualms and no question about it.
I understand. I think all of us have a deep feeling of wanting to leave something better than when we started. And a fellow realtor of mine who recruited me to help co-run Work Moms recruited me on the basis of, she recruited me to Milburn Ed Foundation too, along with a few other people. And they said, don't you want to come on board to help make this better? And if you have the ability to make something better, isn't that something you want to strive for, even though it's going to be hard? And I think that's why, I did agree to, help create this group, because I think collectively we all have that in our hearts. And I think a lot of people in our town do. So with that same approach, I feel like making that hard decision to publicly say, I changed my mind, it's time voting, and knowing that it's going to make some people angry, that really bothers me greatly. But I feel like we did approach it with like a very, expansive, research model. And as much of an open mind. We had our minds made up in one way. Each person, I think, started on different points, made up, and then we changed our minds multiple times, and we argued with each other and individually because we couldn't argue together except for when we were here. So I think we took that really seriously, and I do feel like the decisions that I am making are mine. I understand I was still not 5'7", was really, but I wanted to be convinced. I wanted you guys to like fight me on it, to say, this is why I think you're wrong, this is why you can consider it. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I really still feel like if we don't have to go through this from 1972 to now to create a charter study to change something, we still have the ability to later. It may not be easy, but if I'm mad about something, I can get a lot of people off their butts to, stomp in and get the signatures they need. So if something's not working, I'm happy to be held accountable to be like, this isn't working and this is why. Can you help me get the signatures? And I'll be the first to say, this isn't working. I will totally help you get the signatures, even if the 7-person council is not willing to make that change. I'll be that citizen to pitchfork right in there and be like, y'all, this is wrong.
I have a question for all of us. If I know we don't control this, but if we could control this, would we say to the parties, do not endorse a candidate, make nonpartisan work in the right spirit?
No.
I don't think that's up to us.
I know it's not up to
think
us.
Red
I know.
Bank did
No.
that collectively, but Red Bank is also largely Democratic and they collectively did it together. So that eliminates people's choice. I don't want to dictate how people choose to support their candidates. And I think to tamp down, a fellow party person to say you can't support somebody and don't support somebody.
No, you can support an individual, like a party officially endorses.
Yeah, no.
I don't know about
parties
that. I
can,
think parties should
I
support.
totally agree with that.
I
I
have
think
no problem
parties
with
should
it,
not feel threatened by moving to nonpartisan
Correct.
elections because they can endorse candidates. They're not out of the process in that
Right.
sense.
That wouldn't be a
That's my
recommendation I
point,
would make.
right?
Correct, yeah. I don't think anyone here is formally
No,
saying,
and
please
like I
don't.
said, I think the local party could serve a very important function in mobilizing local people for
For the right
ballot
reasons.
elections.
Dr. Khan?
Yeah, this whole process has been a lot of work from, the moment we all decided to run together, collect 200 signatures on each of 5 petitions, because you can't have.
It seemed like the easy part.
Yeah, right.
And I think this whole process has brought us, we've explored every nook and cranny, I think, of every, portion of the decision that we've made today. And I honestly, I really enjoyed having this discussion, and I think this is something that we were all somewhat looking forward to, just having
I was
this.
dreading it.
Well, I think just having the opportunity to comment on a lot of these issues, because I think that we.
We're finally together as like a
Yes,
5,
yes.
yes.
Well,
that
we
part.
all feel very strongly about making the town a better place. And I think not having the ability to discuss this in public as,
Yeah.
based on the guidelines from the director's manual, I think actually allowed us to engage with the material more deeply and not come to a judgment. I think we all went through some twists and turns, particularly with the directly versus self-selected mayor. The partisan, nonpartisan, there's just a whole bunch of literature out there regarding that. And I think Shaunak makes a good point. I think the members of the public, they might be upset about one point or the other point, but I would encourage them to not throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think a lot of these structural changes moving to council manager is very much needed. My academic background is in computer science and applied math, so I like to think about how things break. Certainly when you take an algorithm's course, you focus on studying the worst case scenario. So when I look at structures and I see worst case scenarios, right now what we're operating under, the township committee, it's an informal sort of designation of executive authority to the business administrator. And it's almost like, to give a bad analogy, it's almost like running modern day AI code on a very, very old piece of hardware. You really need to update your hardware at some point because times have changed, software has changed. And I feel like this upgrade almost solidifies that. It's like, upgrading our hardware in some sense so that in the future we can see, better things going forward. So apologies for the, lack of subject area relevance here, but that's sort of how I view the world. And when I came into this, it was very much how do we improve the system, prevent, certain failures that may have happened, in governance over the last 5-10 years, how do we prevent those from resurfacing again at a structural level? So I thank everyone here for
I agree totally
participating.
with what you said, and I think I've been saying, moving from the township committee form to a council manager form is the overarching decision. If somebody doesn't like the other optional features that we're recommending, please remember, you can change those features as a electorate without the charter commission process in the future. So don't throw the baby out with bathwater. Just, it is important that we move to the council manager form and we can tinker with it as members of the public in the future if we want.
I would encourage us to give it a fair share.
Exactly.
Like, let's not assume like, hey, here, 4 years, let's make this change, let's.
We'll have evidence.
Let's let it marinate, let's see how it
Well,
work out the
assuming it
kinks
passes,
and
right?
stuff, yeah.
All
Well,
right.
I think we should vote. I will lead us off.
For this one, yeah.
Oh, for partisan, nonpartisan.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, I vote for nonpartisan.
Let me think about it. Non-partisan.
Nonpartisan.
I'm gonna go nonpartisan, even though that's not where I started.
I'll go nonpartisan. Nonpartisan.
Okay, council, nonpartisan.
Thank you.
Question 8, runoffs. In a nonpartisan election, the commission may provide for runoffs when no candidate attains a majority.
Dan, could you explain the
Yeah.
concept of runoffs?
Yes,
Guys, we're gonna have, we're gonna have a whole synopsis of this, and we're gonna send it to, every.
There's a second round of public
Yeah,
comment.
there's a second round, then we'll, but thank you guys for
Thank
coming.
you for your work.
Yeah.
We appreciate it.
okay, so runoff elections are conducted when a sufficient number of candidates fail to attain a majority of the votes. And the number of what a sufficient number of candidates is depends on the number of at-large seats, which our proposal and your proposal tonight is going to be 7. So the way that the runoffs work is that if the decision is to have nonpartisan elections in the May municipal elections, the runoffs get held on the 4th Tuesday following that election, unless in that year that's the date of the primary election, in which case it happens on the 5th Tuesday. If you are doing a nonpartisan election in the November general election, the runoffs are held on the 1st Tuesday after the 1st Monday in November.
December.
In December, did I say November? Yeah, thank you,
Yeah.
in December. And in that runoff election, the 2 candidates who receive the greatest number of votes are listed. And then the person who receives the greatest number of votes in the runoff is elected. And I suspect that is the important part that you were all really looking for when I was giving you the timing. I'm not gonna ask for questions, but that's the explanation. We can get questions later.
So the denominator, to be clear, is not the number of votes, but the number of voters who cast ballots. Is that right? Because if you're voting for 7 people, each person can choose. 7.
Correct. Each
Okay.
person chooses, each person
But
chooses
so
7.
so instead of the denominator being, because if 500 people show up, you could have 3,500 votes potentially.
Correct.
So I just want to make sure the denominator would be 500.
Correct. If I'm understanding you correctly, yes.
I didn't quite get this, to be honest, so, if there are 3 seats up or 4 seats up, right? That's gonna be, except for the first election, that's what's gonna happen, you're gonna have either 3 seats up or 4 seats up.
Correct.
So are we saying that in a 4, just to make the math easy, in a 4-seat situation, if at least 4 of the candidates don't get at least 25% of the votes, then we have a runoff? Is that what you're saying? I don't think so, right? That's not.
Okay, so my understanding is,
When do we have enough is my question.
my understanding is, say there's 4 seats up.
Right.
And say 1,000 people show up to vote.
So that's 4,000 votes.
4,000 votes. Now, the number of voters who showed up is 1,000. So anyone who attains more than 500 votes is elected.
Oh, okay.
So the denominator
The
is.
question is, do we want to require a majority to win in an election?
So you need to win as a candidate, should you have at least 51% of the vote, so more than 50%.
Correct.
Yeah.
So just to give a sense, right now we have a partisan system which doesn't allow for runoffs. Now, and I have to go back to look at the exact number, I believe in 2022, when an independent was running, no individual achieved a majority of the votes cast. So in our partisan case, where you cannot have runoff elections, a plurality is what is needed to win an election. That is, so in a nonpartisan case, you can have a similar, way to run the election where a plurality wins the election. Or if you're uncomfortable with that, you can also have a provision for runoff elections where if there are people that do not attain a majority of the votes cast, where the denominator is the number of voters, then you have a runoff election to make sure that they would have a majority.
But mathematically, if you have 4 seats up, wouldn't you need more than 8 candidates for that to happen?
Not necessarily. So people could show up and only vote for one person. So if 1,000 people show up and all vote for candidate A, then
And they just ignore the other.
yeah, and they just, so
But there are 4 votes, but they just chose to.
correct, yeah.
And there's no rank.
And there's no rank choice, we're not allowed to.
At this
There's
point in
yeah.
New Jersey, there is no ranked choice voting. There's some
Right.
movement out there to make that change. That's a story for a different forum. That's not tonight.
My position on this is kind of an economically driven decision. So while I do, from a philosophical perspective, prefer having candidates gain a majority, I am concerned about the cost of having a runoff election. And so, what is the likelihood that we're gonna have that situation? We don't know that we can calculate that. And then even if we have the situation, is it better to have a majority candidates elected by a majority and spend the money, or is it better to save the money and just go with the plurality?
So for BOE, they don't have runoff elections.
Correct.
And that seems to work okay in my mind.
Yeah.
My main issue with runoff elections is that the timing of the runoffs is such that there will be few people to show up to vote.
Yeah, so I'm doing that local.
And so is that really determinative as to,
A real
Right.
election.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, I'm guessing the number of votes that you would get in a runoff election, even if you got a majority, would still be less than the plurality, because people would have just voted, 3-4 weeks before, and there's no incentive for them to come out other than a local election, and we just know realistically, people will find reasons not to come out.
I think I am ready to vote on this. I'm for plurality. I'm close to it. I just think it's just too complicated to have people show. I mean, it's difficult to have them show up for the first time.
Right.
Have them show up again.
We're too small of a town.
We're
to
just small of a
expect-
town. Plurality is strong.
And wouldn't that also make more people angry with each other? Now you're down to the
Right.
final 2. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think the argument for a majority is that you want a candidate, in theory, to have some sort of mandate but it's a false mandate if in a town our size for these several elections, it's not a real mandate. So I'm for plurality.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I agree.
yeah, I think it adds a little complication that's not really buying us,
Right.
yeah, in terms of cost benefit.
Council? Got it.
No runoffs.
Right, no runoffs.
So.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I think now we've resolved all of the 8
Right.
questions on the agenda. Since it's getting late,
Right,
can I make a motion to recommend the council manager form of government with a 7-member governing body elected at large with staggered elections on a nonpartisan basis, with the mayor selected by the council without runoffs? Did I get that correct?
right.
Yes,
Okay.
you got it correct.
Second.
I second.
All right.
Roll call vote?
All in favor?
We should do a
You,
roll. call.
roll, okay,
Yeah.
Dr. Khan, you want to do it?
Mr. Biller,
Yes.
Dr. Kung votes yes, Ms. Parker Lentz,
Yes.
Mr. Tenna,
Yes.
Mr. Drucker.
Yes.
We still haven't decided the timing of elections and all that, there are separate questions that we're gonna
We will do that at a later date.
All right.
All right.
So the motion carries, and council, you're directed to prepare a draft report with recommendations consistent.
Right,
Thank you.
okay. Doing this. Yeah. All right, public comment. Speak during the, you know what? I don't have to read all this. Mike,
Yes.
start us off.
Mike Becker, 15 years in town, senior citizen. Tip O'Neill said all politics are local. That's not really correct. It's all local politics are local politics. And therefore, you can't tell me how to vote, but I can tell you how I'm gonna vote. I'm gonna vote yes. I'm very happy about the outcome. You guys did a great, you people, excuse me. That's because I'm old. You did a really good job, very thorough. I've watched every meeting. This is way past my bedtime. I never stay up this late. I leave all the meetings at, 9:30 or 10, and then I go back and watch it for a few minutes, and then I pass out. The reason I'm happy is that living here 50 years, I've seen it all. I'm not going to tell you about it all. But there's so much talent in this town. And I've watched lately that the parties are having trouble getting people to run because of this, the fear factor, this lack of civility. And it's been awkward. And I think that by doing this, by voting yes, that if people do vote yes, I'm voting yes. And I have 5 voters in my family.
Well, there we go.
I think it's gonna allow a little more freedom to not only not have primaries, but to make it through the chute. One of the things that caused me to really be excited about the way you're coming out with your vote is that there were 2 candidates who I wasn't gonna say it, but then I heard you say it. They were trying to get one party to take them, but they had already picked their people, their 2 people. So they had to switch parties over to the other side in order to run. They ran, one's the mayor, one's on the council. They're doing a good job, and they could have easily not made it through the whatever you call that, cattle, the chute. There was just no opportunities. And I think that I'm a Democrat, I have been for life, but I vote all different ways. I'm not a hard voter. I don't just vote the line. So I was able to go help Ben Stoller and Frank Sacamani because, like I said, it's local, and the things that a local politician has to work on, it's not abortion, it's not ICE, it's not immigration. It's local issues.
Thank you, Michael. Next.
Alex Altsman. I lived here a fraction of the years of my past. I just want to say I'm grateful for this body, for your board, for these specific people to be the ones that did the study, did the work, and I'm very grateful. Having been on the board of ed, went through several elections, personally saw no value in political parties playing any role in local elections in the sense of you have to say who you are and you have to be picked by the party and all the other things. And I'm really hopeful that our community will adapt and adopt this new form of electing leaders. And I also do believe that it will attract the best people, not the people that are most connected, not the people that are in some party system, but it will attract everybody and be multiple board of elections. you just go. You wanna run, go run. Do it. I know there's some differences, but I'm hopeful that this community will make the choice. Thank you all again.
Thank you. Jamie?
Jamie Strudo, lifelong resident. You know, I have worked on so many town projects with all of you sitting up here and around this room. I grew up here. I've had, nearly 25 members of my family go through the school system. I'm the only one who got into politics. I got into the Board of Ed, sitting township committee member, was registered unaffiliated, had to choose a party, got involved in politics. And I'm emphatic to see sort of the process unfold here, the studying of the details of, weighing all sides, really thinking about town first. And, I'm a product of the school system. I'm a product of, as I mentioned, so many events and activities that have crossed political lines, right? The alliances and the friendships and the networks that I've made. And then it comes to the ballot booth and a mailer goes out to the township with a picture of the President of the United States and myself trying to divide. I'm in office right now, and I'll tell you what, I'm working on parking, sidewalks, holiday lighting, flood mitigation, pedestrian safety, trying to get money from our representatives. I don't know how that has anything to do with, a party affiliation and putting me next to the President of the United States. For someone who grew up here, who has built bipartisan friendships, and I'll keep those friendships till I die. It was really upsetting to see how partisan elections have divided this community and made lifelong friends, my short life, long friends, turn their backs or feel hesitance to talk or associate with me because of a party affiliation. So now that I see how the sausage is made on the inside, I can confidently say that, this model that you've put forth will continue to serve the community well. Just to talk about numbers real briefly, Mikey Sherrill received 63% in this town roughly. Jack Chitterelli received 36%. I received 51%. We have about 15% registered Republicans in this town, and I was elected. Right? So think about how many crossed over, and Michael Cohen was elected, right? My election outperformed the top of the ballot by 27 percentage points, right? So me running with the same letter that a governor candidate or that a Senate candidate or that a presidential candidate was running on, it didn't make a difference here. And I'm hoping it won't make a difference for the future. And I hope that I am the last Republican elected in this township's history on the ballot. And I hope Michael Cohen is the last Democrat ever elected on the ballot with the party.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thanks for all your work.
I forgot your name.
Charles Van Barrel.
Yeah.
Charles Van Barrel. It's a shame David Cosgrove had to leave, because I turned to him and I said, you and I have known each other, we're fellow parishioners, we're both about the same age. I think we share a lot of the same values. He said, yeah, we do. I said, and yet you chose to be a Democrat and I chose to be a Republican. I said, but we're centrist and we still have a lot of the same values. I said, how would you feel? Put yourself in my shoes and somebody brands you and calls you MAGA in a public forum when you and I both know neither of us are. So I think there's brands attached to party affiliation that don't belong in this township, don't belong at a national level, be it, but we have control over this township. This is the first meeting of this committee that I've been able to attend, and I am extremely impressed with the job you've done, and I thank you all personally. I think you've done a marvelous, very thorough job. You've done your research, and I applaud your vision. So thank you.
Thank you. Jay?
I'd like to commend the commission on the robust discussion around the issues. I'd like to commend Dr. Khan for his words to Mrs. Cosgrove and Mr. Tana for announcing the actions of the individual at the Sunday event. Question on the timing of elections, May or November, is that something that the committee is going to make a statement on? Is that gonna come at a later date?
Yes.
I was surprised not to see it on the list of issues. Okay, so these meetings will continue, and at a future date, there'll be a discussion on May or November elections. Okay, thank you.
Correct.
Clarification on a couple of things, and maybe I misheard them. One was that the political parties cannot fund candidates. That's not my understanding.
No, they can.
Okay, I misheard somebody
Yeah.
who said that the political parties won't be able. to
No.
fund it.
No, Red
Okay.
Bank, they couldn't.
Yeah.
I was
No,
clarifying
no,
Red Bank.
no,
they-
change-
they
the
chose
Demo-
They
They chose.
chose.
the parties chose not to endorse candidates.
Correct, they chose.
The parties are alive and well in Red Bank, in Verona, in Hoboken, which are all nonpartisan towns. So, I just wanted to clarify. Also, I think I heard somebody say that, the name will not be a party designation, but my understanding is that every candidate can have a slogan, and that slogan could say endorsed by the Democratic.
No.
So what are the, okay, so maybe then somebody could explain what is allowed to be put on the ballot. And then, Mike,
You do that.
Do you want to pause and I can go now, or do you want to continue?
if I can continue to
Sure.
get
Yeah.
the answer,
Sure.
yes.
Go ahead.
Okay. So the slogan, cannot identify party affiliation, and it cannot exceed 6 words. Some of the sample slogans that have been used in the past are things like focused on the future, choose forward, strong and free, and fighting for families.
So you can't mention party in the slogan.
Correct.
Okay, thank
Can you
you.
say I'm a registered Democrat or it's just a statement of fact? Or?
No.
No, not in the slogan. About campaigning.
Out and about.
Out and about. I don't
Yeah,
know.
you
Yeah.
can, you can.
When you go knocking on doors?
Yeah.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
You can put it on your campaign literature and everything like that. That's
Or
all.
like, like Democrat for Milburn or Republican for.
No, I didn't mean to the slogan.
Ron, it rhymes
There's
with.
no prohibition identifying your party affiliate.
Corey Beller for
Correct.
Milford.
Yeah.
Overall, but
Overall.
not in the 6
No,
words.
I didn't mean that. That
That's
was
right.
not my question. That was
And
not my
Corey, I
question.
will leave that to your personal counsel.
Yeah.
If you decide to run for election.
Jay, continue.
Thank you for that clarification. And then finally, I wanted to make sure I understood the response to my question, so if I got it wrong, please correct me. The question was, did you have any strong mayor testify before this group publicly? And the answer was no. We decided early on that we were gonna go for council manager, and therefore we just brought in people. Okay, so,
Well, we did interview.
okay, so could you,
We did interview a not so weak mayor.
Right.
Is that how I would characterize Madison?
Yeah.
Right, because that's a borough form, I think. And we did evaluate the,
publicly?
not.
No.
So that was my question. My question was publicly. Did you interview?
The answer is
any-
no.
No.
The answer is
No.
Publicly,
Did you publicly interview anybody that wasn't from a council manager form of government?
publicly.
Well, we interviewed someone who was a manager under, well, first of all, Red Bank, I believe people at a borough council form of government prior to their council manager form of government.
No, my question was current,
it's current
currently
iteration,
in
No.
a,
not publicly.
so the only people that were interviewed were from a council manager.
In a public
In a
setting.
public
In a
setting.
public setting, right, exactly.
It doesn't mean we didn't deliberate that.
I did-
Yes.
I did-
I mean, I'm just,
I just-
for the record, I know you're not saying.
I
that.
understand that, I just, for the public.
Right.
Perception and for the public to hear from others, the decision was made.
To be clear, the manager of Randolph, who currently operates under a council manager form of government, has experience in other forms of government, including in county administration as well.
Right, so, but the question was current.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone on, oh, I'm sorry, Frank?
So I just want to commend you all for all the hard work and time that you put in. I've seen how much time Jerry's put in. I've heard him on the phone. I haven't heard the conversation, but I've heard them on the phone with all of you for hours and hours. You all have done a tremendous amount of work. When the 5 of you came together to run together, I was elated, and that's why I helped behind the scenes campaign for you guys, because you are 5 fantastic individuals. You have diverse backgrounds, and you're all doers. You had a task at hand, and you went in there, you charged ahead, you got it done, and I just am amazed by the speed, efficiency, and thoroughness of the process that you went through. You left no stone unturned, and I think you guys came up with a fantastic set of recommendations. I look forward to it going to referendum, and I know that I will wholeheartedly support that referendum and advocate for it.
So one, thank you, but for the record, we're not done. No, 2 things, like genuinely, we are gonna have, we're gonna have to discuss about the timing of elections and stuff, but you know, we're not a success unless this gets passed.
Right.
But I will help in any way I can to say that.
Thank you.
This will set Milburn up for the future, better way.
Chris, say something, Chris.
I wanna go home.
All right. Wait a minute, anyone over there?
On the Zoom who wishes to speak?
First say, I echo.
No one wishes to speak.
Okay, all right, one more.
I have one thing to add. This is the first meeting I was able to attend because I had my knee replaced and I couldn't have walked here before tonight. So I would have liked to come, but this was my first meeting.
Well, you can go online and,
So
yeah.
thank you.
All the
Yeah.
videos are up there.
Yeah. Okay, I now close the second public comment period. May I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Yay,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. Tommy.